Good evening. I'll call this meeting for the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for Monday, April 25th, 2022 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Board Member Stapleton.
I'm here.
Board Member Anderson.
I am too.
Board Member Phillips.
Here.
Board Member Leung.
Here.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Here.
Board Member Hoy.
Here.
Board Member Nordyke.
Here.
Board Member Varney.
Here.
And Chair Bennett is absent.
If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Board Member Anderson, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not to the urban renewal agenda.
Thank you. And we have nobody signed up for public comment for the Urban Renewal Agency. Board Member Anderson, the consent calendar.
I move we adopt approve the consent calendar.
Second.
The consent calendar consists of the minutes from the April 11th urban renewal meeting and an action item concerning the appropriation of funds from the Riverfront-Downtown Urban Renewal Area grant program to the Salem Center 2, which is a limited liability corporation, which will be building a mixed use commercial, retail, and apartments on the old Nordstrom sites.
Any further discussion? Board Member Leung.
Thank you. I had a question specifically about 3.3A.
Okay.
Is there a staff who could possibly answer a question for me regarding the application?
Yeah, Ms. Rutherford is here. I also see we just had Michelle Bennett join us.
Thank you. So my question is specifically, why is it, how did it get negotiated to 5%? Because this is a 157 unit, and if you do the math, that's 7.85, or let's say 8 units. That would be at affordability.
Kristen Rutherford, interim city manager and interim urban renewal executive director. We've had a number of conversations with the developers, and they've also had a number of conversations with the school district about the affordability component. And it just comes down to the pro forma and how the project pencils to still make it qualify for financing and to be able to operate it into the future. The more affordable units that you bring in a climate where we're having rapidly increasing construction costs and increasing interest rates just makes it very challenging to bring more affordable units into the project. We went through a similar kind of conversation about a pro forma with the Jory Trails apartment. I think when we were first in conversations with them, we were looking at, I think, 20 to 25% of the units being affordable. And then with changes in construction costs, it dropped down to where they were looking at about 10%, and they were able to make 15% work in that situation. It's a different construction climate right now and different cost factors that are impacting the pro forma. So that's how we settled on 5%. The developers are here this evening if you would like to hear directly from them.
Take care. Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if the developers are available.
Yes, I believe that I saw Ian Llewellyn, and I thought I saw Steve Deacon pop on here also. Let me see. Ian, would you like to speak to the pro forma and why we're looking at 5% affordable units in this situation?
Yeah, I'm here also, Kristen. This is Steve.
Oh, hello, Steve. There you are. So whichever one of you prefers to address that.
Sure, yeah, I can touch on it. This is Ian Llewellyn with Deacon Development. Thanks for your question, Counselor. Kristen described kind of the climate pretty well. The intent of the abatement program and the grant is to help with the cash flow over 10 years. And the grant is really needed to make the project economic on a market rate standpoint to stand alone by itself. And as you start creating inclusion for some of the affordable units, it starts eating away at the benefit that the multi-program is trying to provide the project to make it economic. So at the end of the day, we're just trying to balance being able to bring some affordable units online, but not erode the income stream to the point where it negatively affects the financing that we have available to us. So we're just trying to kind of balance the construction climate and all the other factors related to the pro forma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn. Just to kind of put it in plain terms, if I'm understanding correctly, basically, if we were to require more affordable units, then it might jeopardize the entire project. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah, it reaches a point where as you start adding affordable units, it changes the income stream, right? So it changes the intent of the property tax abatement and the benefit it provides to the loan to do the project. So yeah, I think, you know, if we were to go too much higher, we'd have to take another look at the project, and the current financing that we have in place. Certainly, I don't think would work to move the project forward. That's not saying some type of project might not move forward, but the current schematic design of the project we have planned probably would not work.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilor Leon?
Partially. I also had a question about the 10-year rental affordability term. So does that mean that the rates will stay consistent at affordability rates for 10 years only? Then after 10 years, it'll go back up to market rate?
That's correct. The rebate portion is for 10 years and the affordability period is tied to the rebate period.
Thank you.
Board Member Anderson.
Thank you. Just a general comment. One of our council goals has been to get more housing downtown, and that's, you got to balance between getting affordable units and getting any units. And I think that's the issue we're all facing here. But I do have a question for Interim Manager Rutherford. You indicated that there were discussions with the school district. If you could be a little more descriptive on what those were, because I know we've had other problems, or not problems, we've had other issues with the school district in terms of abatements. I'm thinking of a development there on Broadway, North Broadway, and maybe you could discuss that a bit.
Absolutely. Sure. Kristen Rutherford. This conversation with the school district began with consideration of our MUTIP program, that incentive, which is our multifamily housing tax incentive program, which is a property tax abatement for housing construction within the city core. And that program has a transit focus, not an affordability focus. So this project applied for the MUTIP abatement. The city council approved the abatement, which is up to 10 years. So city council approval abates just our portion of the property tax. Projects then have to go and secure approval from other taxing districts to get in the equivalent of 51% of the tax base voting in favor of this. So that can be done just with a vote of the school district. So the project went to the school district, and the school district's vote was, because the project did not include affordability at that time, that they would support only a 5-year abatement. And their approval was to send it back to the city for the city to modify our 10-year approval to a 5-year approval. Then it could go back to the school district, and the school district indicated they would approve it. 5 years does not work for the pro forma for the project. The 10-year abatement is really needed. The costs of constructing in an environment like Salem are going to be equivalent to doing the same project in the Portland metro area, but our rents are significantly lower. So it's much, much harder to make a project like this pencil here than it is in other parts of the state. So we've worked a lot with the developers to try to kind of thread the needle to come up with a solution that would work and that would have some affordable units. So the developer went back to the school district, not as the board, but to speak with individuals on the board about bringing 5% of the units into the project at an affordable standard. The school district from what those board members shared, really wanted to get to 10%, which just does not work for the project. So to try to come up with a comparable solution, it's not quite the same benefit as the MOOTIP. It's a little bit less of a benefit, and actually quite a bit more complicated to administer, and more complicated for the tax assessor to administer. We came up with, instead of an abatement, a rebate program that would rebate back the difference between the city's abatement and what the full abatement would be if approved. So in this scenario, the city's portion of taxes will be abated. The developer will pay taxes on the remainder, which will flow into the Urban Renewal Agency and then be rebated back to the developer in exchange for the 5% affordable units. Now, it's still possible that there could be continued work with the school district. And if the school district at some point were to approve the full abatement, then we would terminate the grant for the urban renewal rebate.
Board Member Varney.
Oh, thank you very much. My question is, of the 157 units, are they all identical in terms of size or number of rooms or whatever? Or if not, how is the determination made which are affordable and which aren't?
The units are not all at the same size. I'll leave it to the developer to give us the exact breakdown in number of units.
Sure, yeah, we have Ian here from Deacon Development. We have 114 studios ranging in size from 400 square feet to 545 square feet. And then we have 36 one-bedrooms that range from 530 square feet to 750. And then we have 7 two-bedrooms that also have a pretty good range in the size. You know, you bring up a really good question. I don't think that we've thought it through all that way, but typically you would just designate 8, you know, in this case, 8 units that would be affordable. I would assume that they might, you know, change every year depending on the demand. But we haven't really thought that through, to be completely honest. I'll add real quickly while I'm talking, that we continue to have really good dialogue with the school district. We spoke late last week as well. Part of the challenges that we're continuing to have is, even in the last couple of months while we've been trying to work through this process, construction costs have gone up and material costs have gone up, which is just kind of exacerbating the problem and compounding it. So we're hoping to move forward with the project, knowing that we have a path that makes economic sense for us while we continue to work with the school board. We've had really good dialogue, and our hope is that we can all partner up with them at the end of the day here. But we're trying to find a path forward so we can lock in our construction costs.
And if I could add to that, just sorry, Councillor. Generally speaking, Councillor Varney, when you have affordable units within a development, you don't identify specific units as that's the affordable unit. It falls into the bigger percentage. That way, you could, in a project like that, this makes you don't want units that are built out to a lesser standard or are kind of flagged as this is the affordable space within a building.
No, I appreciate that. I just was assuming that 5% then would be a range of the different sizes that were available, because families come in different sizes, obviously. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Nordyke.
Thank you so much. And yes, I did have a couple of questions for the developer. When you came before us earlier last year, we talked about what you estimated the market rate would be for these apartments. My memory is that you said between $1,000 to $1,300. I know that construction labor costs continue to change even since November of last year. Is that still the range that you're looking at for the apartments that are not priced at the affordable level? And then I have a follow-up after that.
Sure, yeah, I can tell you exactly what we're currently modeling here.
Thank you.
I will say that our rates are, they're not all affordable, but, you know, capital A affordable, but they're inherently quite affordable. They would be designated as workforce housing rent levels. So we think they're still, you know, very economic for people. So we currently have the studios expected to rent for $1,115. And that's next year, so it's trended up with a little bit of inflation. And then the 1 bedrooms we have down for $1,425, and the 2 bedrooms for $1,775.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I know the staff report talks about, let me just look at it again. The affordable rent rate would be 80% of the MFI on 5% of the units, which I think we estimate would be about 8 units, give or take. You know, can you explain to me in layman's terms, what does that really mean in terms of an affordable monthly rate? What are you estimating that in order to be at 80% of the MFI?
Sure, yeah, great question. So the rates are set by HUD every year. I think they come out in April and are effective June 1st. And so what they're intended to do is take the median family income for a particular area. In this case, it would be the Salem Kaiser published area for the rates. And it's intended to mean that that person renting there is at an income level that is 80% or less of the median family income. And then also, which is quite important, that the rent is to be no more than 30% of that 80% MFI. So they're not spending more than 30% of the 80% MFI on the monthly rent. So it's a predetermined annual rent set by HUD that we would just follow.
And can you estimate what number that is? What's the monthly rate?
Yeah, I know the studios are $990 right now. I apologize, I don't have the 1 bedrooms off the top of my head, but I know the studios are $990. You also wouldn't charge like utility bill backs to the affordable units. So that, you know, all of their all-inclusive housing costs for their unit include that $990, whereas the other units typically are they capped at $990. You also
lost your audio there for Mr. Llewellyn.
Oh, my apologies. Is it coming through okay now?
Seems to be better, yes.
Okay. I was just adding that for the affordable designated units, you wouldn't bill back utilities as well. So there's some savings for the affordable units. And I don't know what the rules are, but we typically wouldn't charge an application fee for an affordable unit as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Thank you. And you know, I was sort of a thought question comment to the developer. You know, because if I was a school board member, I'd negotiate differently. I'd ask to see how many we can set aside for teachers. You know, we don't see any here, but affordable housing developed in partnership with the school district. Would, you know, the goal is to, you know, bring teachers, support them. We know that their income at the beginning is low. You know, any talks in that end to maybe set aside some units for teachers, new teachers.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We actually did have conversations with them about how to possibly set aside units for teachers or particular families that, you know, qualified under certain circumstances. So we had a very good discussion about that. I think the challenge ultimately came down to this is more of kind of an urban infill location, probably not a great unit mix type for that demographic. And then we also, after talking to our attorney, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but we had some legal concerns about how to do that and designating, you know, units for one type of specific profession and some of the potential blowback if we were to do that. But we really like the idea. Ultimately, we talked through some other options, maybe setting aside a fund with the Salem Housing Authority to sponsor that particular profile, which we're still kind of discussing internally as well. But ultimately, it kind of came down to those two things, the legal repercussions as well as kind of the urban infill setting that maybe wasn't the best site for that demographic.
Ms. Rutherford, I see you came off mute. Did you have something?
I was just going to add that it becomes a fair housing compliance issue to restrict units to a certain demographic.
Thank you. Board Member Leon.
Thank you. So I have a few follow-up questions based on some of the comments. Workforce housing. What do you define workforce housing as?
Well, it's one, I don't have the technical definition. I can probably find it in time here, but it's one step above affordables.
Ian, I can speak to that one. We typically define that up to about 130% of the AMI.
So if we were to use everyday people terms in terms of what that means, how much would that be in terms of hourly pay? And can you give some examples of what professions that might fall under?
I can't off the cuff. I'd have to go back and look at what the AMI is for an individual. And then you would do the calculation of 130% or up to that of what the AMI is, and then calculate what the 33% or what the rent burden of that would be. I can't do that off the cuff.
Okay, because I did a brief little calculation, like if somebody was making, let's say, $15 an hour and they were working full time before any taxes was removed, and provided they actually worked the entire month, they would make a little over 2,400 within that 1 month period. So that's, again, without taking out any taxes or anything like that. So let's just say that they needed to get the 2-bedroom apartment, and the prices that you quoted, that was based on what you think the main that the prices would be regularly on the market rate, not counting the affordable units, correct? The 1775
market rates.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's just say somebody was working full time, made that 2,400 again before taxes, and then after taxes, they might barely have $200 left outside of what they pay for rent.
So
yeah, I follow your math. Yeah.
I think that in that income situation, that's where we have programs through the Housing Authority for Section 8 vouchers and more deeply subsidized housing that would be more suitable, because that income level, if that's going to be below what the AMI is. So that would be, so that would be at either, the 80% or less of the AMI, which would be basically a different type of housing product, a more subsidized housing product.
So let's just say somebody applied for housing here, and would those 7 units or 8 units be eligible then for housing vouchers, or would anybody who's renting there be eligible for housing vouchers? And keep in mind, though, that the housing voucher list is 3 to 5 years plus out, though.
At these rates, it's unlikely that a voucher holder, that this would, even at the affordable level, would meet the payment standard.
Thank you.
Board Member Stapleton.
Thank you. Thanks all of my counselors here. I think we're all struggling with the late stage capitalistic society where money is getting tight for all of us, and we're trying to do our best to get affordable units for folks. I just want to understand kind of the basics, and this is for you, Kristen. So we approved the 10-year tax abatement, the city of Salem, these folks here did. The school district approved a 5-year. And then what we're doing is, sorry, did I get that wrong? Oh, and you're on mute, sorry.
They technically did not approve a 5-year. They wanted to send it back for the city to reduce ours to 5 years and then bring it back for them to approve a 5-year.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Sorry.
Okay. So that's what we're doing here tonight. I guess I misunderstood what we were doing then, or I guess
we are doing something separate tonight. This is not the MUTIP. This is using urban renewal as a substitute for the MUTIP.
Okay.
The project does not work with 5 years, and the project does not work with more than 5% affordable units.
Okay, so then let me just state this again. I'm sorry, folks. So we're going with the 5 year. The school district's going to go with the 5 year, and what we're doing tonight. Oh, good God! I'm so
we are not changing our 10-year approval of the MUTIP. Okay.
Okay.
So we are doing tax abatement for 10 years on the city portion that's already approved. Okay. And then layering on top of that, we are doing a 10-year property tax rebate on the difference between what we have exempted from taxes and what the full exemption would be. So the city's exemption is, I think, around $71,000 a year. And the full exemption, I think was around 240, 250,000 a year, somewhere in that range. So what we're rebating is the difference between our abatement amount and what the full abatement amount would have been.
Okay, so I guess the only thing that I was trying to get at is that the City of Salem Urban Renewal District is covering the difference to make this project work.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say.
That's it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Excellent summary. Board Member Nordyke.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilor Stapleton, and everyone else for your comments tonight. I just want to refer back to the staff report because there are some really important fact and findings in there that I want to highlight. And I also want to add my own anecdotal observations. I took some vacation leave last week to spend time with a girlfriend who had just finished her tax season. She's an accountant, so we took some time off together. And we went downtown to the mall because she wanted to go shopping and buy some new clothes. And we walked through the mall. Have you been in the mall lately? I loved this mall growing up. I used to take my grandmother there all the time. And we would window shop through Nordstrom since they were a little pricey for us. But if you've been through the mall lately, you know that this area is in dire straits. They need our help. And this is not luxury condominiums. This is workforce housing. And the rates that the developer provided, and I understand their estimates, because we all know these things change, these rates are reasonable for the area and for what we get, in my humble opinion. And on top of all that, we look at the fact findings in the staff report. And there are 5 public benefits that the staff have identified. 1, maintains a central core area as a dominant center for regional retail and office development. 2, improves pedestrian flow and protection for pedestrians between retail activities and other services. 3, encourages private restoration, rehabilitation, development through public improvements in our downtown core. 4, encourages development of new housing, which we need at every level, including workforce level. And 5, it increases the total housing supply adjoining the retail core area. I will continue to aggressively support every Salem Housing Authority project that comes across my virtual desk, unless it makes no dang sense. All of them, of course, have made sense so far. I think we can and we should continue to push for affordable housing, and we are. And I would love for this to be more than 5%, believe me. But I think that this project is a no-brainer, and I'm ready to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Nordyke. Nicely said. Board Member Phillips. And I just would also, just as a quick reminder, we're still on the consent agenda, which is not typically where we would have this level of conversation. So anywho, Board Member Phillips.
Thanks for that reminder. Thank you, Chris Hoy, and thank you, Councilor Nordyke, and all my fellow board members on this in this case. Great comments, good summary on the last one. I agree that we need housing, and the main benefit that we got last time we considered this was the addition of more housing. I think that maybe one of the understated things is the impact that this will have on the climate action, efforts that we're taking as a community as well, in terms of having housing directly downtown. I don't know. That's just a hypothesis on my part. I guess the actual question I have is we're doing this a different way than we did it the first time. So, this is now through the Urban Renewal Agency, and we're doing a rebate. So it's different than the MUTIP that we did last time. One of the things I'm learning in this discussion that I just want to confirm, though, is that there is the possibility that after we do this tonight, if it's successful, which I hope and expect it will be, that it could go back to that original MUTIP framework if the other overlapping taxing agencies, school board, county commission, if they agree. Is that correct? Does this still leave the door open that we could go back to that original framework with the new addition of 5% defined affordable housing?
So this isn't instead of that, as I understand it. This is on top of that. And
Okay.
This is in place just in case our friends over at the school board don't come around to our way of thinking. If they don't, then both of these programs will stay in place and will help this development happen. If they do come around, MUTIP stays in place, but this secondary sort of supplement will be decreased accordingly. Am I correct there, Ms. Rutherford?
That's correct. If the school board were to approve a 10-year rebate at 5% affordability, then we would undo the grant and go slowly with the abatement.
And then my final question is, so we've said 5% and it's an odd number. This isn't 160 units, it's 157. Do we have confirmation it's going to round up to 8? Like, just so we know what we're getting. Is it 8?
Mr. Llewellyn, you're going to round up?
Yeah, no, we're definitely rounding up. It's 8 units.
Okay.
Fantastic answer. Thank you so much. Is there any other conversation or questions regarding this? Thank you so much for this robust conversation. Thank you to the developers for being here to answer these questions. I think it was a good conversation. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Board Member Leung.
Aye.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Board Member Hoy.
Aye.
Board Member Nordyke.
Aye.
Board Member Varney.
Aye.
Board Member Stapleton.
Aye.
Board Member Anderson.
Aye.
Board Member Phillips.
Aye.
Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. And with that, I see no other business on the agenda unless Ms. Rutherford, you had something else for the urban renewal area?
I have nothing else. Thank you all very much.
Fantastic. We are adjourned then.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor Hoy. I had problems with my microphone wasn't working in my computer, so we had to kind of rebuild it. It took a few minutes, but I will tell you, our IT people, the best, okay? Just in case anyone's curious. They really take you through it. With that, I'm going to open the Salem City Council meeting for Monday, April 25th. And ask the recorder, please call a roll.
Counselor Stapleton.
Here.
Counselor Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Phillips.
Here.
Counselor Leung.
Here.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Here.
Counselor Hoy.
Here.
Counselor Nordyke.
Here.
Counselor Varney.
Here.
Mayor Bennett.
Here. Okay, Councilor Hoy, additions or deletions?
Yes, I move approval of additions and deletions to the agenda.
Second.
Second by Phillips.
Item 3.3B has been removed from the agenda, from tonight's agenda.
Okay. Very good. Any discussion? All those in favor, please respond to the roll call.
Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordyke,
Aye.
Counselor Barney,
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton,
Aye.
Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Phillips,
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. This is an opportunity for councilors or the city manager to share their thoughts, comments. Anybody? Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, just a couple things. You know, we're starting to see evidence that the case numbers of COVID-19 are on the rise. So I would just, you know, it's a lot of, you know, like where we're at in terms of what's recommended it's really a lot about the vaccines. So, you know, keeping it simple, if you're age 12 or older, you should almost certainly get a booster shot if it's been the appropriate time interval. So, you know, everybody that can should get fully vaccinated, and everybody 12 and up should get boosted if possible. There really are significant benefits. And the primary benefit is not no disease. The primary benefit is lack of severe disease, lacking the need to go to the emergency room or be hospitalized or death. So, you know, these are incredibly safe, effective vaccines. You know, get protected, protect yourself, protect your loved ones. It can literally save their life. Beyond that, I just wanted to comment on last week. I had the opportunity to go on a tour with staff from Church at the Park, coordinated by DJ Vincent, and Gretchen Bennett went as well. We went down to Eugene and we got to tour the managed sheltering options that they had at 310 and 410 Garfield. And it was really, you know, eye-opening and encouraging to kind of, you know, borrow from other experiences from, you know, other municipalities. You know, they have very successfully and quickly sheltered close to 200 people, if not more. So, you know, that has certainly encouraged me to want to expand from what we're currently doing and try to get into Front Street as quickly as possible. And then beyond that, I got the chance to tour again the Adoma Homes business in town. Tour was led by Russ Monk of High Impact Technology. And we got to see where they're manufacturing the micro shelter sites that were delivered this past week to one of the Portland Road managed micro shelters. They're on version 3.0, and they're really, you know, quite impressive. And it's, you know, it's local jobs, you know, housing people. There's a lot of, you know, benefits beyond just the sheltering of people that need shelter. So yeah, those were great events, and yeah, that's it.
Great. Anyone else? Councilor Leung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two real quick comments. One, it's a little bit about a week out, but for the month of May, it's Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we do have a proclamation tonight that will be read in a short bit. But I also wanted to invite fellow councilors to a Rise Above Hate event that's going to be taking place up in Portland on Saturday, the 14th of May, starting at 10 o'clock until about 12 o'clock. And the program will officially begin at 11 with speakers and happening for most of the day at the Tom McCall Waterfront Park, and then also at the Lansu Gardens and museums, and even a street festival. And it's going to go on until dusk. If people have more want more information, they should go to OregonRisesAboveHate.com. And then it has a bunch of slashes afterwards, /May-14-event-information. But generally, you should be able to type in OregonRisesAboveHate.com for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, one and all. I recently toured the Tanner project with Councilor Hoy and State Representative Hoy, and I'm sure he'll want to add his own comments when he deems appropriate. I can tell you it was really inspiring, frankly, to tour the Tanner project. The Tanner project is down the street from our brand new Yaquita Hall project, and it provides transitional housing for veterans experiencing homelessness, men and women. In fact, two of the individuals that we met at Tanner Project are a daughter and a father, both veterans, both who've experienced severe trauma, and both are now thriving at the Tanner Project. So we were able to see the benefit of the services and the stability in housing for this co-ed veterans housing project, which is really one of the only, if not the only one, in the city of Salem. I think the other nearest to is in Eugene and perhaps one to the north of us. We had some celebrity guests as well. In addition to meeting the incredible veterans who live there, we also got to meet, Rich Truitt from Habitat for Humanity, and Senator Merkley was there on hand as well to tour the project. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with Senator Merkley and others in a roundtable environment and share with him the urgent need for more affordable housing, more mental health services, and to also share some of the successes we've had in getting more people into shelter just within the last few years on council. So I was grateful for the opportunity to tour the project and to meet with one of our United States senators and to really tell him firsthand what we need here in Salem, because we can vote all we want on our projects, but we all know that the votes at the Senate level carry a few more zeros behind them. So the opportunity to really meet with our elected officials and tell them what we're seeing as boots on the ground was a real honor. But my hat is off to the Community Action Agency and all the other partners who make the Tanner Project the success that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Councilor Varney?
Thank you. Just a real quick one. This past weekend, well, Friday, my son was coming down to visit me for the weekend to help with a volunteer project for Earth Day. And so kind of last minute, I reached out to Chief Womack to see if I could get a tour of our new police station, because my son is a law enforcement officer up north of Spokane, actually. And Chief Womack was able to organize that. And I just wanted to say the new police station is absolutely, I mean, it's great. It's so functional. It just meets so many needs. The training facility, the crime lab, everything was thought out really, really well. And I was really impressed. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, Ms. Rutherford.
Sorry it took me that long to unmute to say I don't have anything to say.
Oh, okay. All right, well then we'll move on to proclamations. As Councilor Leung mentioned, we have the Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month coming up or underway. Whereas following the 1990 passage of an amendment to a joint resolution of Congress, President George H.W. Bush declared the month of May Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, noting the significant contributions in science, commerce, education, and the arts made by Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Micronesians. Whereas Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Micronesians have demonstrated their dedication to ideals upon which the United States was founded and have worked for the advancement of human rights and democratic ideals throughout the world. And whereas Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Micronesians have a proud legacy of service and dedication to our community, and whereas we recognize Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Micronesians whose love of family and community have helped to sustain our city, particularly through the commitment of the following organizations in Salem: the Micronesian Islander Community, Haleluta, Paradise of Samoa, COFA Alliance National Network, Oregon Marshallese Community Association, Living Islands, and whereas the city is grateful to the members of the Mayor's International Council who highlight the heritage of the American Pacific Islander and Micronesian communities, now therefore I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim May 2022 Asian Pacific American Heritage Month and ask that residents of Salem join me in this special tribute to celebrate the contributions of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Micronesians, dated this 25th day of April, 2022. And here to receive the proclamation are Tassie and Craig Kenner, Tahani Surreal, Bella Borja, and Jay Mundo. And I thought I'd start off, is and I may be saying this wrong, I apologize. Tassia and Craig, are you here? And/or? There you are.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Mayor.
How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm okay. I'm
great.
Thank you for recognizing our little communities here in Salem and around Salem. I appreciate it so much. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. We appreciate you all too. Tahani?
Tahani isn't on. She's ill.
Oh, okay. Bella?
Hello, half a day.
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. I have a little something prepared if it's okay to share.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So half a day, everyone. I'm Bella Borja. I am the Advocacy and Development Program Director with the Micronesian Islander community. On behalf of MIC, I wanted to extend our deepest appreciation for being recognized tonight for the work that we do, not only in Salem, but throughout the state of Oregon and beyond. In the last few years, MIC has set up rapid responses to supporting individuals and families dealing with COVID, and have continued to run vaccine clinics to help get our community members vaccinated. And as we all know, Pacific Islanders suffered disproportionately high rates of COVID infections at the beginning of the pandemic here in Oregon and still do. MIC has also successfully run leadership fellowships focusing on health and early childhood education and literacy. Our community health workers have done significant work in increasing health equity, specifically in enrolling individuals in OHP, getting them connected with their primary care doctors, and tuberculosis prevention. We've also sought to address food insecurity in our communities by reducing barriers and making food pantries more accessible for communities. And MIC also does work in domestic and sexual violence prevention programs, prevention that focuses on liberation and practicing culture. I could literally go on and on about all the wonderful things that MIC is doing for our Micronesian community and other Pacific Islanders, but I know I only have a minute and I'm probably already over time. All that to say, it's not often that Micronesian Islanders are recognized for the work that we do, and also without being lumped in under the AAPI category, where we are easily overshadowed, right? And despite the diversity in the cultures and specific needs that we each have. So thank you for the recognition this evening with MIC's amazing leadership. I know that we're gonna continue to have a positive impact with our Micronesian communities in Oregon and beyond. Thank you, and Sizos Masi.
Great, thank you very much, Bella. And then Jay Mundo.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mayor,
Hi.
for having us. Hi, good evening. And on behalf of Haliluta, we'd like to say half a day and tiro in our language. We basically is saying hello. And we like to thank the city of Salem for the diverse champion in getting us involved in the community. And most certainly that's always been our mission, is our cultural awareness and be a part of the community, no matter where we at. And certainly Salem has brought that and enhanced and giving us opportunities and vast for a lot of the Islanders coming out from the Northern Marianas. So we really appreciate it, and we do love your city out here in Salem.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thank you all very much. We'll enjoy the next month with you. So thank you. And Councillor Leung, did you want to say anything?
I think I pretty much summed it up, and
okay.
Cassie, Bella, and Jay did a really great job highlighting our community, and we really encourage people to go out there and look and see what kind of community activities and events we'll be doing. Most of MIC, Micronesian Islander community events, will end up being virtual this year for the month of May. But we do have an annual cultural celebration that we do anywhere between August and September. So, but this year, and I'll do a reminder later on as it comes up, our upcoming event will be on Saturday, September 10th at the Jerry Frank Rotary Amphitheater. So mark your calendars and we'll see you there.
Okay, great events that you've had over the years. I've really enjoyed them. Thank you. We have one person signed up for public comment, no agenda item associated with it. So we'll just go ahead and have Representative Raquel Moore Green speak with us for a moment if she's available right now.
Mr. Mayor, it's related to item 6B, I believe.
Correct.
Oh, it is 6B. I'm sorry.
It is. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Raquel. Tell us what you want to talk to us about.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Chair Hoy, and City Councilors. My name is Raquel Moore Green, and I'm the State Representative for House District 19, South Salem, Turner, and Almsville. And my husband and I have been residents of Ward 3 for the last 28 years. We reside at 1557 Webster Drive, Southeast, Salem 97302. And tonight I'm commenting as a state representative on agenda item number 6B. As a state representative, one of the most effective roles the state can have in job creation and economic development is that of providing tools and resources for infrastructure. To that end, through the formal capital construction process in the legislature, $540,388 was secured to aid the Salem Airport in the readiness of the return of commercial air service to the city's airport. The return of airline service to the Mid-Valley will be a win-win for the city and local businesses, as well as do great things for our region. Tonight's information report mentions a need to approve acceptance of these funds, and I would urge you to pass a motion tonight to accept the funds. I'd like to add a couple of additional comments pertaining to this state appropriation and its execution. There are no program requirements to comply with, and there is no grant application or process. These funds have simply been gifted from the state general fund to the Salem Airport Fund. And as we all know, there are lead times for some equipment purchases that can exceed 3 to 4 months. And all of us have probably experienced some supply chain issues that makes it important that this equipment be ordered as soon as possible. There may well be dollars available after the itemized purchase of the listed equipment, freeing up the remaining funds to pay for other items listed in the information report, such as signage, lighting, TSA improvements, and terminal seating. Lastly, it's been reported that there is a need to locate storage for the equipment. The legislation as passed in House Bill 5202 itemized a canopy cover for the equipment, so that is paid for as well. Earlier today, I received an email from the Legislative Fiscal Office stating that the Department of Aviation is in the process of setting up their budget structures and plans to reach out to the airport sponsors by next week. Mr. Mayor and councilors, this may well be one of the smoothest and easiest transfers of state money to a local municipality. And I would encourage a motion and subsequent yes vote to acceptance of this state appropriation, allowing Airport Manager John Pascal to move forward with the purchase of the equipment as itemized in House Bill 5202, Section 457. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Representative. I just want to completely agree with you. This will be quite simply the smoothest transition of money we'll ever see come from the state of Oregon to help us. So thank you for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
It's an honor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Councilor Hoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rep. Moore Green, for coming down. And I hope you both didn't just jinx that, making it a complicated process. I just wanted to let you know, Rep. Moore Green, that I do anticipate making 2 motions this evening, one of which would accept that money. So when we get to that portion of the agenda, I anticipate making those motions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to be having motions under information items tonight, I think, is the way we'll be doing this. An odd way to do it, but we're going to do it that way. Okay, what else have we got? Virginia, what do you got?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rep. Moore Green. Thank you so much for coming down, and it's a pleasure to meet you virtually here. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity with you here and Representative Hoy as well to state that in my area that I represent in Ward 1, we are right under the flight path for planes that are coming overhead, and I get a lot of complaints about noise pollution. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to bring that up with you here. Of course, noise pollution and tackling that would be really difficult for us at a city level, but at a state level, that's somewhere that we can actually get really some much needed help in that area as well. So I would just want to put that out there for you to receive, hopefully, and maybe we can talk at a future date about how to best move forward with something like that in the future.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Stapleton. And it is nice to meet you virtually. I do hope we can do that in person soon. You are correct about noise pollution, as does my home sit under the flight path here in Ward 3. They come from the south and they circle back, and you know, my children, when they were little, you know, they point up, and you know. So anyway, yes, let's plan on meeting and have that conversation. Thank you.
Now that you mention it, I live under that flight path. Thank you for reminding me. Jeez. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else live under that flight path? This has been an issue we've heard about for years, the noise, although it has improved since the helicopter school left several years ago. So it's gotten better. Anyone else? Okay, thank you again, Representative Morgan. Really appreciate your work on this. Okay, we'll move on then to the consent calendar. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Second by Phillips.
Thank you. We have item 3.1A, which are the April 11th, 2022 draft City Council minutes. Item 3.1B, the April 18th, 2022 draft City Council work session minutes. Item 3.2A, which adopts resolution number 2022-24, authorizing a transfer of appropriations within the city's fiscal year 2022 budget for unanticipated charges. Item 3.3A, which approves an 8% salary adjustment to the Deputy Police Chief pay range retroactive to November 8th, 2021, and extend the city's hiring bonus program until September 28th, 2022, or until such time as state law no longer exempts hiring bonuses from the Oregon Pay Equity Law. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Excellent. Any discussion? Councillor Leung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had asked staff several questions in regards to 3.3A, and I wanted to follow up and make sure that our audience hears some of those answers to those questions.
What are your questions?
So the main question I had, and this is based on after reading, and my understanding is that it's been difficult to recruit new additional police officers for a variety of reasons. And in one of the emails I had received from one of the staff, it explained some of the challenges associated with the recruitment and hiring. And so my question is what's the city going to do to try to increase the number of hires?
Chief Womack, are you the?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I can speak to this. Trevor Womack, Chief of Police. Thank you, Councilor, for the question. Yeah, the recruiting challenge is a challenge right now in law enforcement in general. Across the nation, we're seeing this, right? It's not just a Salem problem, it's across the nation. It's even international right now, actually. And so applications are significantly down, and that's from numerous factors that we can talk about also. But what we're doing to address that is trying to be even more proactive than ever. We've got some billboards going up around the town announcing positions. We're actively recruiting area colleges and job fairs and resource fairs. We're working with trying to create career pathways here locally, such as with Salem Kaiser School District, with their CTEC program, and with Chemeketa's LEAR program, their law enforcement certificate program. And so we're just diving deeper into the community to try to build more relationships and work on that longer term strategy to try to attract people to the profession here locally. And then also on the agenda is the extension of the lateral hiring bonus. That's an effort to try to draw in qualified officers from other areas. We had a couple come up from California. I'm one included, but we're trying to draw in more of a short-term strategy, try to bring in qualified officers sooner, while we also work on that longer-term strategy as well.
Thank you, Chief.
A follow-up question to that is, how are you building relationships deeper within the community to encourage recruitment. And my other question has to do with the hiring bonus program, but I don't know if you'd be able to answer that, or is that something Ms. Michelle Bennett has to answer?
I can speak generally. I talked about, again, we're working on building career pathways in the community. So even through volunteerism, right? The pandemic slowed a lot of things down for us because some of these things you can't do very well virtually, like a cadet program. So now we're re-energizing our cadet program to try to bring in a younger generation and bring them into the organization and hopefully encourage them to want to be police officers and eventually apply. We have CSOs, community service officers, that are 3/4 time positions that do some field work for us for non-major calls like traffic accidents and so forth. And it's kind of a stepping stone to becoming a police officer. So again, we're just working on these career pathways to try to bring people into the organizations in multiple ways. The lateral incentive bonus, the lateral bonus program is a temporary thing authorized by the state of Oregon to help with this recruiting problem, this challenge that we're facing now. And so there's a short window of time when we're allowed to offer these type of benefits. The council has already approved that, and now we're asking to renew that until so long as the state allows us to continue to do it. We need to be competitive in the marketplace. Every other police agency that you search for, get a job and name that city in Oregon, is going to be offering lateral incentive bonuses also. So for us not to do that would make us less competitive in the job market. We are all competing for the same small pool of qualified applicants and candidates. And with applications down, we're all the competition is fierce. You know, it's an employee's job market right now. We're not immune as a law enforcement agency to things like the Great Resignation that we're all experiencing. And so it's a challenging time across the board for all employers, including us. And we need to make sure we're staying competitive in the marketplace. And this helps us do that.
Okay.
Thank you. And my other question, the 7,000 bonus hiring, where did that number come from? And the second question associated with that, is that coming from general fund dollars or from a different funding source?
The number that we came up with is just, again, to try to survey other agencies and what the job market is showing us. And so we want to be competitive with that. And so coming up with that $7,500 bonus is reasonable within what other agencies are offering as well. So we're trying to stay competitive. And it's coming from salary savings. So we have vacancies within the department that give us some extra dollars from salary savings that we're able to apply to things like this. So it's just within our budget already, our existing budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bennett, were you also going to speak on this?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Matt covered it for me.
I thought he might have. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any further discussion on this item? Okay, if the recorder please call the roll.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Phillips.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll move on then. I'm going to open public hearing 22-141. If the recorder want to start us through this one.
Yes, thank you. The Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing to receive testimony regarding Amendment Number 2 to the 2021 Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan. The hearing will begin with a staff presentation and no individuals signed up to testify. Thank you.
Okay, who we got?
Hi, Council and Mayor. This is Tiffany Otis with
Tiffany.
Programs. If you'll give me a moment while I get to my share screen. All right. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. So this is in regards to the American Rescue Plan Act. home ARPA home funds for the city of Salem. This is the process of the applications being submitted. The recruitment started back in October and closed the end of December. The applications were reviewed and recommended. Staff recommendations were reviewed and sent to the urban development leadership. In February, staff forwarded all of the applications and proposed recommendations to the UD leadership team. Here are the funding recommendations as proposed. Hope Plaza, which is sponsored by Center for Hope and Safety, of $250,000. Sequoia Crossings for the Salem Housing Authority of $1.5 million and $4,000 for project delivery costs. Services for Victims of Domestic Violence Hotline and Case Management for the Center for Hope and Safety of $100,000. Women at the Well Case Management by Women at the Well for $47,000. Northwest Human Services Host Youth Case Management by Northwest Human Services for $35,965. St. Francis Shelter Case Management by St. Francis Shelter for $60,000. And then the administration allowance at 15% for the specialized funding of $352,405. And as you can tell, we spent down to the very last penny. The proposed programs will cover these primary services. As you see, a majority of them are for case management. In case management, there's crisis referral, crisis intervention, services for the homeless youth, safety net services through domestic violence, and then the larger construction projects for affordable housing. The next steps. Prior to this public hearing, a 15-day comment period was provided to the citizens of Salem for the review, questions, and or comments on Amendment Number 2 to the 2019 Annual Action Plan. As of today, the city has not received any citizen comments regarding these proposals. After the council's approval, the information is then sent to HUD for their approval. Funding allocation will be approved at the city council budget adoption. The city will create the contractual agreements and execute them. Then the projects and programs will be implemented and monitored. I have to get you back up. Sorry, I'm having problems getting you back up. There we go.
Well, we know what you're up to. I was looking at that, trying to figure out, that didn't look like mine to me. That is great. Right. Okay, any questions for, are you done, Tiffany?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, great. Thank you. Are there any questions on this portion? Yes, Councilor Stapleton.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that when you said that there was no comment from the public, I just wanted to comment for you that I think you're doing really great work. And the reason why nobody commented is because nobody's mad at you about this, right? There's no bad news here. It's all really great news. And I wanted to personally thank you for taking such an interest in our homeless youth, in domestic violence, and getting some of those affordable units that we are desperate for off the ground and running. So I appreciate you for all your work on this.
Thank you. And the effort is not mine alone. It takes a team and a village to get this work done. Thank you.
Great. Very good. Okay. There's no further questions. I'm going to close the public hearing. Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move City Council adopt Amendment Number 2 to the 2021 Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan and direct staff to submit required documents to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second.
Second by Stapleton. Any discussion? Nope. Okay. Recorder, please call a roll.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips,
Aye.
Counselor Leung,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll move then to, I'm going to open a public hearing on 22-147, and the recorder can launch us again.
All right. The Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing to receive testimony regarding the 2022-2023 Annual Action Plan for Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Program funds. The hearing will begin with the staff presentation, and no individual signed up to testify. Thank you.
Thank you. And who's?
Good evening, Mayor Bennett and Council. I'm Shelley Ahinger, Federal Programs Manager here with the Urban Development Department. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the public to comment on the proposed program year 2022-2023 Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Act Annual Action Plan. The Annual Action Plan addresses funding goals and priorities identified in the HUD required Consolidated Plan. However, you will note that many of the actions that we are asking Council to consider align with the city's overall goals of addressing affordable housing, homelessness, and social services. And I will ask that I'm part of the team with Tiffany, so you're going to hear some of our projects that we're recommending. You heard in hers, and they will also be in this Annual Action Plan request. This Annual Action Plan one moment, please. This Annual Action Plan marks the third year of the 5-year consolidated plan approved by Council in 2020. The activities are carried out by community partners. Program year funds for 2022 would be primarily expended during the 12-month period beginning July 1, 2022. The Annual Action Plan funding cycle began in October of 2021, with staff conducting technical assistance, software training, and hosting conversations with our for-profit and nonprofit partners. In January, after the application period closed, staff reviewed the proposals to determine if the activities were eligible based upon the federal funding guidelines. It was determined at that time that all but one application was fundable. A 30-day public notice regarding the proposed allocations was published in the Statesman Journal and emailed to community stakeholders. The announcement was also posted on the city's website, in the Salem Public Library, and in the Urban Development Department. Just like with Tiffany's program, no comments were received. The AAP was formed with consideration to other community plans addressing affordable housing, economic development, and supportive services for low-income and at-risk populations. For example, a priority in the council-approved strategic plan includes a community desire to increase affordable housing options, improve coordination of social service agencies, and reduce the number of hardest to shelter in the community. Our Salem plan for growth, which included significant public input to help meet Salem's housing needs by removing barriers and providing incentives to multifamily housing development while ensuring new development is compatible with neighborhood needs. And the recently approved Salem Climate Action Plan. Strategies in the CAP being addressed include increasing housing density, food access through community gardens, and strengthening neighborhoods and communities to increase climate resilience. I said previously, a total of 15 applications were submitted and considered. This is an increase in applications when compared to the previous year, Reasons for the increase include in 2021, many programs were focused on preparing, responding, and preventing COVID-19 and received resources from other entities. This year, requests for City of Salem CDBG public service resources exceeded the amount available. And in Tiffany's presentation, we considered those applications for funding through that American Recovery Program Home Entitlement Grant. Now I want to go through some of the programs that we're recommending for funding this year. Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency and St. Francis Shelter have requested resources, $440,000, to assist in housing unsheltered households with security deposits and rent using the tenant-based rental assistance model. If approved, the city's home entitlement funds will support new construction of 250 affordable housing units in Salem. The housing mix includes 24 single-family for-sale homes, which we're really excited about, in addition to rental housing focused on our veteran and senior populations. As noted earlier, this new construction is experiencing some of the same impact as with inflation as cost of building increase, supply chain disruptions happen, and an increase in our tightened skilled labor market. So these subrecipients are working in some of the most difficult environments that they have had in their housing development experience. However, we want to ensure council in the community that staff is working closely with our partners to get the projects to closing, under construction, and available for our families. I also think it's important to mention that new construction projects funded through Home Program require a 20-year affordability period. CDBG regulations allow the city to use up to 15% of the annual allocation to provide supportive services in the community. Staff is recommending that Marion Polk Food Share receive $165,000 to support seniors with a nutritious meal, a friendly visit, and a quick safety check 5 days a week through the nationally recognized Meal on Wheels program. In addition, Marion Polk Food Share proposed to hire youth who are interested in growing food and cooperatively manage an urban farm. Crew members take home generous amounts of fresh produce and are able to teach others urban farming techniques. Stipends of up to $1,000 are provided from the resources. We're asking council to consider allocating additional CDBG funds to meet the increased construction costs for 3 projects awarded in previous years. Each are designed to address homelessness. Hope Plaza, a new construction project developed by the Center for Hope and Safety, is located in downtown and will provide 20 permanent housing units for persons experiencing domestic violence or human trafficking. Fisher Sizemore apartment rehabilitation will result in improved housing conditions for persons living with disabilities, and Seed of Faith's project will result in culturally focused transitional housing, as well as an additional warming, cooling center in the city. They are incorporating energy efficient design to reduce energy use and heating costs at the facility. We are also recommending $700,000 in CDBG be used for the acquisition and rehabilitation of 2 properties located on Wallace Road in West Salem for an early childhood learning center. This will be administered by Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency's Head Start Division. The learning centers will meet some of the demand for affordable childcare in West Salem. Of course, we need resources to support our administrative costs, including technical assistance that we provide, fair housing education, and compliance monitoring, which is based upon HUD and city established protocols. When we announced the CDBG and home funds, we also sought applications for social services using city general funds. The staff is recommending funding for the procurement of 800,000 pounds of food for the emergency food bank operated by Marion Polk Food Share. In addition, crisis intervention and referral services provided by Northwest Human Services, the Salem Housing Authority Street Outreach Program, which connects persons residing in homeless encampments with services. The anticipated number of individuals to be served through these three programs alone is over 15,000. Next steps. Similar to what Tiffany spoke about this evening, we will submit the application to HUD. We will begin to implement the projects. And as importantly, we will be monitoring the programs and reporting back to council and the public next year on the accomplishments. And with that, I want to thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Shelley? Anybody? All right, thank you very much. Councillor Hoy. Oh, I'm going to close the public hearing. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move City Council adopt a 2022-2023 Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan and direct staff to submit the required forms to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second.
Second,
Mr. Mayor, second.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I'm sorry. Any discussion? Hey, recorder, oops, I'm sorry, Councillor Stapleton.
It's okay. I'll hold back. Go ahead with the vote.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. If recorder, please call the roll.
Councillor Mordyke.
Aye.
Councillor Barney.
Aye.
Councillor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Phillips.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, we will move on then to our next public hearing, 22-164C on our agenda.
Okay, the Salem City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing the planning administrator's decision approving phased subdivision tentative plan, urban growth area preliminary declaration, and class 2 adjustment approval, case number SUB UGA ADJ 22-01 for property located at 2527 Robbins Lane Southeast. The applicable criteria are SRC 205.015D for the phased subdivision, SRC 200.025E for the urban growth preliminary declaration, and SRC 250.005D2 for the class 2 adjustment. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes action for damages in circuit court. The hearing will be conducted with the staff presentation first, followed by testimony from the following. The applicant is limited to 10 minutes. Neighborhood associations are limited to 5 minutes. Other interested parties are limited to 3 minutes. and the applicant's rebuttal is limited to 5 minutes and limited to matters which were introduced during the public hearing. When it's your turn to speak, please state your name and address or ward number for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, I see you're turned on. Did you want to, did you need to say anything in advance of us starting?
No, Your Honor. I just wanted to show that I was here and be prepared to answer any questions that might.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sure. Go ahead then, Aaron.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Aaron. Your Honor, if you could inquire about ex parte contacts.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any ex parte contacts to disclose? If you do, if you'd sound up, I can't see everybody, so let me move this a little bit. There we go. Anyone have any ex parte contacts on this?
Or conflicts of interest.
Or conflicts of interest. Okay, great. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you. Are you able to hear me and see my screen?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Bennett and members of council. My name is Aaron Panko with the Community Development Department, here to present the council review of a phased tentative subdivision plan to divide property located at 2527 Robbins Lane Southeast into 178 single-family lots, ranging in size from 5,000 square feet to 19,283 square feet in size, in 3 phases of development. At this time, I'd like to enter into the record the staff report, including all attachments and public testimony received to date.
Okay.
This is a vicinity map of the subject property. The property is approximately 42 acres in size. It has frontage along Robbins Lane Southeast to the south, which is designated as a collector street. Robbins Lane turns into Brentwood Drive, which is also designated as a collector street. It's under jurisdiction of ODOT, runs along the eastern boundary of the subject property. Commercial Street is located further to the west. It's designated as a major arterial. And then Battle Creek Road is located on the east-northeast, and it's designated as a minor arterial street. The subdivision does have some connections to existing local streets. There's a subdivision to the west. It will have access to Misty Morning Avenue Southeast. And then there's a street access to the south, Genesis Street Southeast, a subdivision down there that connects out to Robbins Lane. And this is a zoning map of the property. The property is currently zoned RA, residential agriculture. It's identified in the light blue. To the south and the west of the property is RS, single family residential zone property. It's identified in yellow. And to the north and south of the property are areas that are not highlighted. This is property that's located outside city limits. It's in the jurisdiction of Marion County. The orange areas south of Robbins Lane and to the west of the property towards Commercial Street are zoned RM2 multifamily residential. And this is an aerial photo taken of the property in 2016. The subject property was cleared of trees between April and June of 2018. It's prior to the annexation of the property into city limits in June of 2021. And here's the more recent aerial photo taken of the property that shows the current conditions after the tree removal and removal of residential structures. Mitigation for loss of trees was already determined by the City Council with the annexation of the property into city limits. As development of the property occurs, the applicant's required to provide replacement trees that include not less than 5 different species and are also a larger caliper width than the minimum code standard. The applicant has also agreed to contribute towards the city's tree fund and will delay recording a final plat until a date that's 5 years from the end of the timber harvest activities that occurred. This is a photo. It's taken from Robbins Lane. It's looking to the west towards Commercial Street. One of the older residential structures that was removed can be seen here as some of the trees, the older trees on the site. And then this is a photo taken of Robbins Lane looking towards the east. Robbins Lane, before it turns into Brentwood, is barricaded. There's no access to Brentwood. Brentwood's a substandard street, and the eventual plan is for closure of the street. This slide shows the tentative subdivision plan to divide the property into 178 lots in 3 phases. The tentative plan shows 2 large open space areas. There's an open space area in the northwest corner of the property. It's approximately 2.88 acres in size, and it's going to be dedicated to the city as a future park. And there's a second open space area that's located at the southern portion of the property by Robbins Lane, and this is going to be used as a water quality and detention facility. Because the property is located outside of the city's urban service area, this development request includes an urban growth area preliminary declaration application, and is to determine the necessary public facilities that are required to be extended to the property. The applicant has requested a Class 2 adjustment to dimensional standards for Lot 37 in Phase 1 of the subdivision, and the applicant has requested alternative street standards to increase the street connectivity and spacing standards, and to increase the maximum grade for local streets in some limited areas. And this slide shows the proposed phasing plan. Phase 1 results in creation of 76 lots. The first phase will not have direct access to Robbins Lane. So Misty Morning Avenue to the west will be extended from this existing subdivision, and then Genesis Street will be extended from the existing subdivision to the south to serve Phase 1. Phase 2 results in the creation of 42 lots, and this phase will include an extension of Zeus Avenue to complete the connection from Robbins Lane to the first phase. Zeus will be a future collector street running through the center of the subdivision. And then the final phase includes 60 lots on the eastern portion of the site. Comments submitted indicate some concerns regarding increased traffic, safety concerns, street connectivity, and then concerns regarding the existing conditions of Robbins Lane. This map shows the street network in the surrounding area. Robbins Lane to the south will provide primary access to Commercial Street for the subdivision at the time of completion. The proposed subdivision will connect to the 2 local streets that are subbed into the property, Misty Morning and Genesis. The subdivision will have internal streets that are stubbed to surrounding undeveloped properties to allow for future connections as surrounding property develops. This includes an extension of Zeus Avenue, which is going to be a future collector street from Robbins Lane to the northern boundary of the subdivision. And then when the property to the north develops, this collector street will be extended to Battle Creek Road, providing a complete east-west connection between Battle Creek Road and Commercial Street. And staff has done a complete analysis of the application materials and the approval criteria for a phase subdivision, and found that the application is consistent with the approval criteria, and therefore recommends that the City Council affirm the decision of the planning administrator. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have a chance to ask questions of Aaron after we hear from members of the public and the developer, or the applicant rather. The applicant we'll call on first is Mark Lowen. The applicant has a collective time limited to 10 minutes. Mr. Lowen here.
Yes.
And Mr. Lowen, are you going to be including, you listed a series of folks that you might call on. I want you to understand the whole thing together is 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Understood. I'm going to make a short opening statement, so we're fine.
Very good.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lowen. Address is 3425 Boone Road Southeast. I represent DC Salem Property LLC, the application for this 178 lot subdivision at 2527 Robbins Lane. We are a locally owned Salem company. We've been around since 1999. We've been developing multifamily and single family residential housing in Salem and the Willamette Valley for quite a while. We're here. We are part of the Salem community. We work here, and we view this subdivision as part of the bigger solution of the ongoing demand for housing in the greater Salem area, providing a quality single-family residential housing option in South Salem. So far as the rest of the development team this evening, we have Mark Grenz and Natalie Janney from Multi-Tech Engineering, and our traffic engineer, Tegan Enlow from Enlow Consulting. I'd like to state that we really appreciate all the hard work that has gone in. Let me adjust this, excuse me, you can see all of me now. All the hard work that's gone in with coordination with staff as we've gone through the subdivision process. We support the approval and the conditions of the administrative decision. We encourage the City Council to support the recommendation of staff to affirm the administrative decision. After meeting with the South Gateway Neighborhood Association last week, I'm certain that there's a majority of the questions are traffic related. So what I'd like to do is turn my time over to our traffic engineer, Tegan Enlow, to provide a summary of the traffic impact analysis report and address some of those traffic questions. So I'm going to turn this over to Tegan, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tegan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Mayor and members of Council. I'm really happy to be here to be able to answer any sort of lingering questions that are posed related to the traffic analysis. I did read the public comments that came in that were related to the impacts from the development. So I just wanted to briefly go over how the traffic analysis was prepared and see if there's any additional information that I could provide that would help resolve any of those questions. So our team worked really closely with the City of Salem to determine what the traffic analysis needed to include. Everything from the intersections that we studied, how we forecasted growth on the network, and the number of trips that we felt the development would create, and how they drove around the city, how they would use the different roadways to get to and from where they were going. One of the things that we are asked to evaluate when we do a traffic analysis like this is to look at the number of trips that the development is going to generate and how that interfaces with the existing roadway network. So how many trips are we adding to each roadway? How many trips are we adding to each intersection? And then the city has really specific mobility standards that look at how those trips lay on top of or layer with the other traffic volumes that are out there. And then it tells us whether or not there's enough capacity out there for the existing roadway to handle the additional traffic as well as the intersections. Based on the analysis that I prepared and submitted to the city, that they reviewed and provided their, I don't know if approval is the right term, but agreement with the analysis methodologies and the findings, we found that the roadway network, including more specifically Robbins Lane, because that has been a point of question, has more than enough capacity available on it to handle additional trips that would be coming from the development, and that the intersections in the surrounding area also have enough capacity to be able to handle any additional trips from the development. Happy to answer any sort of questions that may be lingering from the community or from members of council or staff. But based on everything that we've looked at, we're expecting there to be minimal impact to the surrounding roadway network from the proposed development.
Right, thank you very much. Mark, did you have anyone else you wanted to have speak? Mr. Lowen?
There we go, unmuted. At this point in time, no, we are prepared to take any questions and hear public comment.
Great. I'm always intrigued by where do these street names come from? I'm just curious. That caught my attention. I just wondered.
Great question. Actually, let me tell you the truth. What my son tells me to do, Google it, Dad. So what it boils down to is the proposed name of the subdivision is Mount Olympus. So those are various Greek gods. So, and goddesses. We try to have it balanced, but that's what we came up with those. Tried to balance those out. Some of them may not be quite as recognizable, but that was intentional.
It's great. No, they're very, very recognized. I was intrigued by the choice. Are there any questions? Tom Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Tegan about the traffic studies. You know, when you look at the background, when they talk about Robbins Lane and how much traffic it's going to be, it says 2,500 trips per day. And to the uninitiated, that sounds like a whole lot. But I'm looking at the TSP that says 1,600 to 10,000 vehicles today. So I'm just wondering if you could comment not just on where 2,500 fits in the TSP. I mean, we can kind of figure this, but how often do these streets actually get to 10,000 per day? That's pretty, it's a large number, but it's also within the TSP. So I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So
thank you.
When we look at what a roadway can handle in terms of the traffic volume, there's a couple different things that are evaluated. There's the functional classification of the roadway, and that's the intended use of the road itself. So some streets are meant to be smaller and carry less trips, like a local street, and that's going to be most typically what a house would have a driveway onto, and it's just the people going to and from their homes. And then there's streets that are classified as a collector, which is what Robbins Lane is, and it's meant to carry more traffic from the people who come out of the houses and then are going to sort of filter into the rest of the city. So they might be heading to the freeway or they might be heading to the grocery store, but they would use a collector facility like Robbins Lane to get to their next destination. I looked at some data that Tony Martin at the city had prepared and sent to the local neighborhood associations. And I was seeing anywhere from, I believe, 2,500 to 3,000 cars per day are currently using Robbins Lane. That's what's counted out there as existing over a 24-hour period in one day. So that's various hours of the day, people going to and from the different neighborhoods that are out there under the existing scenario. What we do is we look at how many additional trips we think we'll be generating in the development, and then look at how those enter the surrounding roadways. So some of them are going to come down onto Robbins Lane, either through the continuation of it into the development or through the connection with Genesis. And some of them are going to filter through the adjacent neighborhoods through Misty Morning Avenue and out that way. But even with the trips that we would be adding from the development, we would still be well below what would be considered the capacity of that collector street, which is intended to be able to hold, according to the city's TSP, up to 10,000 vehicles per day.
Mr. Mayor, I have a
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, a different question. It's not a follow-up, but it's a different question.
No. It's up to you. Do you want to go ahead?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I'm looking at thank you. I'm looking at the staff report, and part of the concern that was expressed by the neighbors is, well, it looks like
okay, just a second, Tom. Just a second.
Yeah.
Want people to mute their microphones, and Ms. Medlock, you will not be allowed to ask questions. That's not your role here. You're here to testify. Okay? There we go. Okay, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was some concern expressed by citizens' comments about, well, you know, at some point this may connect into Battle Creek Road. If it connects into Battle Creek Road, we're going to have a whole lot more cars coming through our neighborhood. And the staff response says the proposed subdivision does not make a connection to with Battle Creek Road, but when I look at the map that's here, it sure looks like it could make a connection to Battle Creek Road. So I'm just wondering, you know, I'm looking at the subject property and it ends on the right-hand side, and then there's a kind of a dotted indication of the city limits, and if you go right through there, you're at Battle Creek Road. So I just want the either Tigan or maybe one of the developers to tell me that in fact they do not intend, nor will they be connecting into Battle Creek Road.
I can speak to that. Natalie Janney with Multitech Engineering. I'm one of the engineers for the applicant. And there was some discussion with the city about having a connection to Battle Creek, but the location of where the property has kind of any frontage onto Battle Creek is very close to that overpass that goes over the freeway, and it would not be an appropriate location for us to connect to Battle Creek. And so there will not be a connection from this project onto Battle Creek.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. When you were deciding that the phases between 1 and 2, why was the number 1 chosen as first one? That's the first question I have.
Actually, looking at it, the way the phases are set up, and I'm glad you brought the question, Commissioner Gonzalez, because there's a little clarification that needs to be involved there as well. The phases are numbered out. Is it going to be in that 1, 2, 3 order? Possibly yes, possibly no. We break it into 3 separate phases. Likely, we're probably going to do phases 1 and 2 at the same time. That's tentative what we have on the agenda at this point. But keep in mind, and one thing I don't think that was mentioned in the staff presentation is that actually Zeus, the collector street, will be put all the way through. It's a requirement as part of any of those phases 2 or 3. So there will be a connection to Robbins Lane immediately upon development of any of the phases. Realistically, it's probably going to be phases 1 and 2 at the same time anyway. So that kind of goes to the wayside. But that's the situation with the phases. They're not necessarily going to be sequential with the way the numbers are set up. If Natalie might want to touch on that a little bit more as well. But
yeah, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Thank you.
Because of the location of phase 1 and because of how the utilities are with this site, we'll have to do quite a bit of improvements through what will be phase 2 as a part of any phase 1, which is why Mark's mentioning that we might do phases 1 and 2 at the same time. But we recognize that there are a lot of improvements that will have to be done through phase 2 as a part of that phase 1 improvement. Also, Zeus, whether or not it gets fully improved, would be an emergency access into phase 1 at the bare minimum.
That's very helpful. It makes sense now that you're explaining it. The second part is, actually Mark answered the first part where it's phase 1 and 2 might be done at the same time, but if you could estimate from today to people moving in, the houses are sold. We have rising interest rates, tricky housing market coming up. Is this going to be a subdivision that's built and just sitting there? So I'm just curious, time frame, what you guys are looking at.
Natalie, do you want to do with that one, or you want me to do that one? I'll pick up and she can fill in behind me. The way the agreement currently is with the city of Salem regarding the previous forestation on the property, we cannot record a plat until July 1 of 2023. Based on our current timeline, we would start breaking ground on July 2, 2023. Figure the construction cycle for a phase. So we're likely going to be starting construction, I would say spring of 2024. You figure typically, a 4 to 6 month construction. So people would be moving in, let's say, fall of 2024.
Okay. Yes. Anything else, Councilor Gonzalez? No, okay. Councilor Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have 3 questions, and it's based on the testimony that might have been provided by either Tegan and or Mark. So forgive me for not remembering which person said it. So my first question is, there was a phrasing, and I think Tegan, you had used it, minimal impact. I think that was relating to traffic. Can you explain what minimal impact means and when you're using it?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. So when I use it in this, I guess in this scenario, what I'm saying is that one of the things that we are asked to do is mitigate our impacts if we have any that happen to the transportation system. And the way that's defined when we look at the traffic volumes and the amount of trips that we add is anything where we're adding and it's causing it to no longer perform its standard. And within this analysis that I did for this development, even with us adding all of the trips that we would be adding for the development during, we looked at what would be called the AM peak hours, so kind of what you would consider the morning rush of everybody heading to work or school, and then the PM peak hour, which would be people coming home at the end of the day. Under both of those scenarios, we're meeting the mobility standards that are required by the city. So all of the study intersections that we looked at, even with the additional trips, we're below their threshold for saying the intersection doesn't operate appropriately anymore.
Thank you. And then the second question, I think it was actually something you had mentioned too. You had talked about calculating the traffic that would go through the area based on the new builds. Where does that analysis come from?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. So when we're looking at the amount of traffic that would be generated by the development, we use a national document that was prepared by ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And basically it's this like 3 or 4 volume book. It's huge, and it's made out of data that over the years, people have actually gone out to different sites and they look at if it's a housing development, how many houses are there, and then how many trips did it produce. And they take all this data and they put together in a manual, and we use that to forecast based on those trends. Okay, if we reviewed data from this, subset of locations and everything and the number of trips they put out, how many trips do we think that a development of this size would now make? So I used that document and I said, okay, well, this number of houses, this is how many trips we think would be coming out of it. And then what I do is I look at how are those trips going to disperse onto the surrounding network. So part of that is conversations with city staff, understanding that they have a really robust knowledge of how their transportation network operates. Part of that is reviewing traffic counts that are collected as part of the project, where I can see the actual volumes on the roadway. I also look at things from more of like a regional standpoint. So there's actually transportation models that are prepared where they look at things like 20 years into the future, how do they expect people to be driving on the roadway and where would they be going to and from? And then all of that gets smushed together and we put together what we think is a reasonable distribution. So using all of that and in coordination with the city, I worked most closely with Tony Martin. We estimated that about 75% of the traffic would come out of the development and would use Robbins Lane, because there were 2 main access points there from Genesis, and then also with the primary road curving up into the development. And then we thought that there would probably be about 25% that would sort of disperse into the surrounding neighborhoods via Misty Morning. So they may come and connect onto Commercial Street. They might go north into different areas. So we looked at that as well.
Thank you. My other question, it has to do with on the report on page 3 of 6, specifically under B, traffic and street connectivity. This might actually be a staff question. So if it's staff, it's staff. So apologies for that. There's one statement that specifically says eventual alignment at Brentwood Drive Southeast will need to be determined through future study or as a condition of future development. That has nothing to do with your development. That would be if future development occurs.
I'm not familiar with that, so I'm going to punt that over to the city or someone else that would know more than I would on it.
That's correct. From our understanding, that's correct.
So it's not going to be on them, but a different one. Okay. And I think this was presented in the report that was presented a short time ago on PowerPoint. The traffic, was there a traffic collected in 2021? Like seeing how much people were going up and down on Robbins Lane?
So there's a couple different things you could be referring to. One of them is that independent of our study, the neighborhood association had reached out to the city of Salem and asked them to collect some data on Robbins Lane so that they could better understand how people are traveling on there. They look at things like, sorry, I'm actually just opening up the data right now. Okay, so yes, that was collected in 2021. So they went out there and counted, it looks like for about a week. And they look at how fast people are going, what time of day that they're traveling at, how many cars are on the roadway. And it basically gives them an idea of how the road's currently being used. So there's that set of data. And then separate from that, I did a round of traffic counts that were collected for the traffic analysis. And I went out and counted a couple different locations within the project study area where I looked at what are called turning movement counts. So the ones that were collected on the city are kind of like if you took a slice of the roadway, it's someone just going each direction, like back and forth over that one, you know, if you drew an imaginary line. The traffic counts that I collected are turning movement counts, and they look at who's taking or how many people are making a right, how many are making a left, how many are going through at each one of the intersections.
Okay, and my last follow-up question, you mentioned that the city did a traffic analysis in 2021. What month was that? And then you also mentioned a traffic count. What year and what month was that?
Okay, so the data that I have that the city collected in response to the community is September of 2021. And then the counts that I collected, they were also done in September of 2021.
Do you know if it was after school had already resumed, or was it still when students were on summer break?
I believe that when we coordinated the date that school had already started, but I'm wondering if that's something I can also verify by looking up now when the school year began. If you want to give me a moment, I might be able to circle back to that for you. I'm going to do a little internet sleuthing.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I lowered my hand. I believe my questions are going to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize.
Yeah. It's okay.
That's good. Okay. And we'll move then to.
I'm sorry. I think I have an answer to that last.
You have the
question.
answer. Okay.
Yeah. I'm being told that we believe school started on September 8th, so it would have been in session.
My son started school September 8th, so I know it started on the 8th.
Okay. We all agree. School started. Okay, I think if there's no more questions, then I can't see anybody. We'll move on then to Julie Krishman.
I believe that's Jake, Mayor.
Oh, Jake. God, I can't. I'm just not seeing well. That is Jake. I'm sorry. Jake, I apologize.
No problem. That's fine, Mayor.
I'm getting blinded by old age.
No worries. Good evening, Mayor Bennett, city councilors, and city planning staff. My name is Jake Krishnan, and I'm the chair of the South Gateway Neighborhood Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thanks for the planning staff for pulling together all the content, and also to Mark Lowell for presenting before Cigna last week. I think lots of points that I'm going to talk about have been raised by different councilors and answered also, but I'd like to present a certain perspective on some of those points. One is at the outset, I'm in agreement with the general need for more affordable housing. So there's no doubt about housing being needed here. Residents have also raised their concerns in prior public hearings through written testimony, but there has been no response to this specific question. So hence, we're raising this at the City Council. So specific to this development, 3 comments that I had to make. One is the Robbins Lane improvement. So we understand it's a collector, but woefully it's not up to collector standards. So that's been mentioned in the planning staff's report for this development. It's way below collector standards. And one of the things that we are seeing as part of the proposal is there is going to be improvement for Robbins Lane near the access point to the proposed development. But at the part of the road that is prior and connecting to commercial street until the development, there is no proposed improvement. So we're going to have this weird bottleneck situation where the under collector standard status will continue, and then suddenly there will be an improvement. To what avail? It doesn't make any sense at all. You're still going to have a choking of traffic if it is expected to come in through the neck, right? And that's one of the biggest parts that we wanted to see is how can Robbins Lane be improved all throughout, not just at the point of single access to the development. So that's one of our requests. The second piece is around vehicular speed. Councillor Anderson did point out very clearly, yes, 2,500 is not a big number, but we also have to look at it from the context of, is it truly a collector today? So both are balanced out. So if it's truly a collector and you have 2,500, absolutely. I don't think anybody would be even raising the question, but it's not. So I don't know that there is a way to actually prorate what number of vehicles is adequate for the road that is under condition today. So if you're able to improve the road, automatically the second piece will not come into play. And therefore, given that there has been no improvement, we are asking for speed humps on Robbins Lane. Now, we were told by Tony Martin that collectors cannot have speed humps. And my response was, well, it's not a collector because you're not getting the benefit of a collector standard. So you can't throw that at me. So either install speed humps or let it be improved to collector standards. And the third point I wanted to make out was emergency vehicle access. Today, I think till phase 2, I think Robbins Lane is going to be the single point of access to the development. Today, if you actually, I have some videos that I took. I have not attached it to my testimony, but the streets are double. The Robbins Lane is double parking, right? We find cars on both sides of the road, and therefore, if emergency vehicles have to go through that through that street to the development, we're going to have a crisis of issue where, let's say, there is a 55+ community there. They need some emergency service. Somebody might actually die there waiting for the vehicle to come through because there is a choking of the traffic at the bottleneck. So I think the key point that I wanted to make was this is not the developer's problem, obviously, but this is more of a city kind of issue. Is how can we improve Robbins Lane overall, end to end, that leads to this development, and that way we can solve a lot of the problems that are in attendance there, and that should help ease some of the concerns that we have around traffic, safety, livability, everything else. And that's all I just wanted to convey to the council today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right. We'll move on then to Diney Medlock. You'll need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, and I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here we go. As a resident of Ward 4, my name is Danae Medlock, and I'm concerned with the proposed development at 2527 Robbins Lane Southeast. There's only one way in and one way out of Robbins Lane. So as you can see in this picture, you go in, there's a dead end on the east side because we can't use Brentwood, and then you come out. So you imagine the traffic that goes along with that and the bottleneck that can happen because of that. And it's just a frightening thought. Now, moving on, Robbins Lane currently serves 300+ homes and apartments, 2,500+ vehicles entering Robbins Lane daily, and over 85% of the traffic is traveling at a speed over 30 miles per hour. And this is according to the traffic impact analysis that was done on November 15th. Now, when we are talking about categorizing it as a collector street, this is what we mean. In terms of width of the street, it does not meet the standards of a collector street. If you look at the top, a standard street classified as a collector street has a 60-foot wide right-of-way and a 30, and what we do is we do a 30-foot wide improvement. Robbins Lane is only a 40-foot wide right of way, and yet it is called a collector street. And what they're proposing is doing a 20-foot wide improvement. Now I'm sourcing this, what Robbins Lane is right now, from the Salem, what it is compared to the standard that is shown in the Salem Transportation System Plan that was amended January 13th of 2020. Now, as was brought up before, we're really concerned at the fact that we're calling it a collector street, but it's really not. And when you have that along with the other street that will be connecting, it's not a safe, it's an unsafe setup. Going in knowing, yeah, we're going to call this a collector street, but it's really not. It's not wide enough. You know, as Jake was saying, people double park, then you can't get through. Do we have to wait for somebody to die before, like, we believe that this really is not a collector street? I think that really what we want is to have some improvement to the street so that we can move forward with the development, because we're not against the development. We think it's great, but it is not safe to move forward with it if we have not.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Medlock, I just want to understand, is what you're saying is it's not a fully developed collector street, but the right-of-way does exist. I mean, the actual public property is available if, as Mr. Krishnan suggested, it was built out. Is that what you're saying? You indicated there wasn't enough right-of-way. It's the right-of-way's there, the street isn't. Is that kind of what's going on?
So according to the plan that was written out for the proposal, it is saying right now for Robbins Lane that there is only a 40-foot wide right-of-way that's available. So you might be having to go into people's property to be able to have it go out further. I am not an expert on this, but when I was—
Well, check with the experts then. Yeah, I want to understand that. That's a really good question. I'd like to understand it better. Well, thank you. Anyone else have questions? Okay. Patrice Aiello? Patrice?
I'm trying to come on.
Ah, okay.
I'm not used to doing this.
Yeah, well, took me 45 minutes to get on today, so I got you on it.
Did it work?
Ultimately, but I had to talk to an IT guy to get there. You're working now.
Oh, I am? Okay.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Okay. My name is Patrice Aiello. I live at 6067 Pikes Pass. I'm at the corner of Pikes Pass and Misty Morning. And these streets are small residential streets. They cannot deal with this. The width of the streets would accommodate 3 cars close together. If there's a parked car, 2 other cars have to squeeze by. I'm afraid that it's going to get even more traffic than the 25% that the traffic study says we're going to get over here. Because of the situation of Robbins Lane, those 2 entrances are very close to each other, Zeus and Genesis. And Robbins Lane is so far south of the development that people, especially coming from the north or the northeast, the freeway, Costco, Kubler, they are not going to circle way around on Commercial and go way south to Robbins and then have to go up Robbins, turn left, and come way back into the development. In my letter today, I put a map in there to try to make this clearer. It is such a direct route to come up here instead. I drive these streets. People are going to do it. I mean, and especially when Fabry goes in there, that's going to connect Battle Creek to Reed. This is going to be through Misty Morning here, overloaded with traffic coming from the northeast. And I'm obviously very upset and very frightened over this. So I thank you. Please read my letter. I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, excuse me, we have one more individual signed up this evening. Her name is Kathleen Simka.
Oh, okay. Kathleen Simka, you're on. Oh, but you're not, you're muted right now. Can you unmute? Is your mute going to come off, Kathleen, do you think?
If you're looking for the button, it's on the far left-hand side where it says mute. You should be able to unmute right there, just in case you're looking for it.
Take your cursor down to the bottom and go all the way to the left, and you'll see a little microphone. You see that? Yeah, I think you found the video. Next to it is a little mic.
The meeting host could send her an unmute request, and then she would just have to click it.
Yeah.
We've done that attempt several times, Councilor Hoy.
Okay. Kathleen, I'm really sorry. If you unmute here, we're going to ask our planner a question. Why don't you work on it a minute, and we'll try to figure this out. Okay, this is a chance to question staff, Aaron Panko or Tony Martin or whomever is here with the staff. I'll start. I would like to know about this question about right-of-way for Robbins Lane, whether the right-of-way exists. There is a plan to acquire right-of-way, or what the development plans are for Robbins Lane. Aaron, do you know?
Tony, are you here?
I am.
Do you want to take this one?
Tony knows.
Good morning. Good morning. Good evening, councilors. Tony Martin, Public Works Department, Traffic Engineering. Robbins Lane is a collector. It is developed and built to collector standards.
Okay.
It is 34 feet curb to curb with 6-foot bike lanes. That is the standard for this collector. The right-of-way between Commercial Street and Genesis, more or less, is 64 feet, which exceeds the typical 60 feet. The question about the 40-foot right-of-way is that in front of this property, the right-of-way is only 40 feet because we inherited this from the county, and that was the county standard back then. When this development builds, they will dedicate the right-of-way along the north side of their frontage and build the full improvement to 34 feet. And it will curve into their development. And then the Zeus, I think, is the collector street as it turns the corner. It will continue to be 34 feet wide with 60 feet of right-of-way. They may, when it gets into the residential area where there's driveways, they may create parking pockets, which is one of our collector standards that allows parking on one side or the other as it goes through the development. So it is currently fully developed to collector standards. Making it and making a street wider will actually increase travel speed. It's the narrower roads. The comment about the roads being narrow and being difficult to get 3 cars through, that is true in a residential street. We want cars parked on both sides, so people have to slow down and they queue and they go slowly through the neighborhood. That's the desire in the residential neighborhood. That's why local streets are only 30 feet.
Okay, thank you. All right. Kathleen, were you able to unmute?
Yes.
Excellent.
Had to go jump through my settings, but thank you for your patience, Mayor.
Oh, thank you for yours. You go ahead.
All right. My name is Kathleen Lemke. It's with an L, not a K, but that's all right. My husband and I live at 2120 Robbins Lane. We are part of the Terrace Lake Park community in South Salem. It's a 55+ community. And I know the numbers I've been hearing about how many homes, but I will tell you, we have over 200 homes just in our one community here.
Yeah.
And we have seniors that are trying to pull out right now onto Robbins Lane. You look right, you look left. You better look right and left a couple more times before you pull out. That's a big concern for my seniors, I will tell you. Yes, I'm on the Cigna board, but when I'm there, I'm always representing my seniors. This is a big deal for me. I don't want to see somebody hurt. So I've seen the data. Tony and I have talked. He ran the ropes for me and Cigna board. I've seen all the data, but then there's the reality. There is 6 communities already on or just off of Robbins Lane. 6. My guess is we probably have hundreds of homes here. And you're going to add another almost 180 at the end of this little tiny street. So there's been several other issues that have already been brought up. I've heard them on my testimony, which I put in verbally. I also talked when this property was being annexed a year ago. So I've been at this a while. Here's my big question, and I'm just going to lay it out there. I've got to try to think outside the box, and I'm going to ask for City Council to at least consider this request. If you come down Battle Creek South, you pass Landau, where they're building currently quite a few, I believe, apartments or duplexes. You go a little bit farther to your right, before you go across the Battle Creek Bridge, is Brentwood. We've all been talking about Brentwood. I am not an advocate by any way, shape, or form of creating a freeway from Brentwood onto Robbins and then onto Commercial. But there is a real small little portion that could be utilized. As soon as you turn off of Battle Creek onto Brentwood, there's already a driveway there. Somebody's using this now. There's an open area, it's been cleared, goes right onto this property. Or it could be made to go on this property. And I'm aware that this would be a ODOT access approval, Marion County, City of Salem. But if you want me to work on that, I would love to do that. Can we please try to think outside the box to keep people safer, besides just Robbins and Misty Morning Genesis? That's my big point, and I appreciate you having the patience and listening to me. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking time. Thank you. Okay, any questions for Ms. Lemke? Okay, any further questions for staff? Yes, Councilor Leung.
I have a few questions for staff. There was a moment when you had last presented, you showed a aerial footage of the area that's going to be impacted. And you had mentioned earlier in your report that there was going to be a public park, future park, as well as water retention. If you were to show that actual image, can you pinpoint where that would be in relation to the rest of the build?
Okay, so I have the slide up here I think you're talking about. So we have the future city park that's up here in the northwest corner. And then we have the water quality facility that's down near Robbins Lane, and that's in phase 2 of the development.
So is that park, I'm trying to see what where the street, is that one morning?
That's Misty Morning. So if I go back,
Misty Morning?
Yeah, to the aerial here showing the existing
that's
conditions.
the one I wanted to see.
Yeah, so it's going to be up here in the northwest section of the property, backs up to the subdivision here.
Do you know what kind of park it's going to be designed as, or is that to be determined?
I think it's going to be a neighborhood park.
So it'd be similar to the one that's a little farther west, Bennett Park, for example.
I'm not sure that answer.
Okay. And my other question, you know, a lot of the testimony that we've seen tonight, read and or heard from people, has to do with the traffic impact and taking in consideration that this is going to increase along specifically on Robbins Road with the addition of those two roads from Genesis, and I think you said it was Zeus was the other street. But then there is also people who are asking specifically about that one little roadway, like through Brentwood. So there's no possibility of connecting with ODOT for even that one little section of Brentwood, so that if people wanted to go out through that way versus coming through the other two ways or three ways.
It's barricaded currently. There's no driveway access. There's no street access from the subdivision that goes out to Brentwood along its frontage here. There's some topography concerns in this area. I think it's pretty steep. And then Tony might be able to speak also to some of the safety issues along Brentwood.
Sure. Hi, Tony Martin, traffic engineering. Brentwood is entirely within ODOT right-of-way. It's essentially a frontage road. The reason it's severed is at the connection with Battle Creek. It's on the inside of a curve right at the overcrossing. So the guardrail, the bridge abutment blocks the view, and it's very unsafe. So we would not be want to put in a position where we're sending a lot of traffic out to a place that has really bad sight distance. See the road curves away, and the guardrail and the bridge rail blocks the view. ODOT right now is in the process of widening I-5, and if we use Brentwood, where that red is going to go away when they widen I-5, and that project is under development right now. In fact, Battle Creek, the overcrossing of Battle Creek will be turned 90 degrees, and it'll actually connect into Wiltsey. And then Battle Creek on the south end will tee into that new alignment. So anything we would consider doing there would be throwaway. And the best location is the next parcel to the north, further away from the bridge, when that property comes in for development.
That's the one over by Landau and Battle Creek, correct? The one that you're circling right now?
No, it's just north of this property.
Okay.
Okay, I can't tell, but
it's Landau's just to the north up here. There's an approved subdivision for this area already, but there's a piece that's outside city limits that's between the approved subdivision and the one we're talking about now.
And so there's another future development that's going to be occurring there, but just so I'm clear.
Yes, there's development potential here once it's annexed into the city.
Okay. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you. One of my questions I think was already answered, but my list of questions is about the proximity to transit and other forms of transportation. So I am guessing from how close the map is, this development is to Commercial Street, that we are within a quarter mile of the transit line that runs there. Is that correct?
I don't have that information right off, but I can look at that.
Thank you. And then in previous conversation, we had talked that Robbins Lane has bike lanes. That was one of my questions. And can I confirm that?
It does have bike lanes, both sides.
Great. Thank you so much.
And there's no parking allowed in the bike lane. So the comment about the cars parking on Robbins Lane, those people are all breaking the law and should be cited.
Yes, I see that a lot and hear about folks parking in bike lanes. So we would love to see some enforcement on that, of course. And then I'm guessing that the pedestrian infrastructure is there as well. Are there sidewalks the length of Robbins?
Yes, sidewalks, both sides, the length of Robbins up to this development. There's a missing piece between Genesis and this subdivision. There's a property that's in the county, and we were not able to exact sidewalk out of them when they develop. They're the ones that have a little football field in the backyard.
Okay. Okay. So we're missing a little link. That would be
A little, but it's in the county, so you know it kind of puts us in a tough situation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then we also have talked about the street design being built for traffic calming, which you guys spoke about a little bit, being narrower, and I've seen on the map a lot of kind of almost twists and turns, corners where there doesn't necessarily have to be one, right? They're not straight shots like what we have over here in Northeast Salem, where people can just get on there and really go. Is that part of the traffic calming that city staff are trying to get at with these developments?
It's not necessarily a requirement. A lot of the twists and turns, the slight curves, are really more accommodating topography. To minimize cuts in the layout of the subdivision.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Aaron, let me know about the.
I do have an answer here. So it looks like the property here is about closer to half a mile from Commercial Street. So outside of that quarter-mile distance.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see in the stuff we're talking about, the trees that were taken down in 2018 before annexation. I'm just curious, is the entity that cleared the trees the same entity that is now wanting to develop the property?
I'm not sure.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Lowen, thank you. So at the point you cleared the trees, were you contemplating that you wanted to get annexed into the city of Salem?
I honestly cannot answer that question. I was not employed or part of that process. So I really don't have an answer for you on that. My apologies.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any, Tom, are you, okay.
No.
Any further questions? All right.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, it's there's slight risk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett. So I just want to understand, what is the curb to curb width of like a defined collector? What is the minimum on that?
Hi, Tony Martin again. Curb to curb on a collector is 34 feet wide.
Okay, and it is that.
It is that, exactly.
Yeah, so, and then, but it feels maybe a little narrower because there are bicycle lanes there?
Maybe it takes out 12 feet. So that if I don't do math in my head well, but it still provides 2 adequate travel lanes. There's no cars parked. The road is wider because there's not usually a bike in the lane. So it seems wider than a local residential 30-foot curb to curb.
Got it. And so for the other testimony that I kind of glanced through in preparing for tonight's meeting was there was some concerns that emergency vehicles like a fire engine or a fire truck couldn't get there, but that is not a concern.
That is not a concern. In a residential street, 30 feet curb to curb with a car parked on both sides leaves you 16 feet.
Okay.
And fire trucks go through 16 feet all the time. They would prefer 20 if you ask the fire department, but 16 feet works fine. 2 vehicles can pass in 16 feet, but they're going to go very slowly, which is a desire in a residential neighborhood.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess like there's no way to phrase it as a question, but I mean, this does feel like it's a choke point. I understand the neighborhood's concerns, but I guess, the staff's reason that they initially considered approving this was because it doesn't meet significant criteria to push back. Is that?
The street is adequate and meets the current standard.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, Councilor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a follow-up question for you, Tony, specifically about, or maybe it's an Aaron question, both of you. Over where the one of them entrances into the eventual development would be on Zeus, the creation of Zeus Street or Avenue or whatever you decide to call it, but that would go into Robbins Lane. But you also mentioned that it was like a very weird turn, I guess. to get into that development?
Oh, I don't think it's a weird turn. It's just a curve in the roadway.
So would so would that curve be enough for like to say the huge fire truck to go through that?
Oh, absolutely. Curve? Yeah, it's 34 feet wide. Yeah, with bike lanes. So yes, fire truck. That's I forget the exact radius, but it's our normal radius for a collector is 200 feet. I think this one is a little bit tighter than that. To accommodate the water quality and help with the lots, but I think it's in the neighborhood of 150 foot radius, which is plenty for and fire trucks can get through all of the intersections, and they're 30 feet wide, so there's not a fire safety issue here.
So it could go through Genesis, and it could go through, if whatever reason had to go through Misty Morning, the side of Misty Morning.
Yes. Yeah, fire truck can travel on all local residential and collector streets.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Barney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of a quick question. I'm curious about how many trees are going to be planted. I see the minimum of the 2-inch caliper, and it says it'll comply with SRC 808050. I was just curious as to how many trees that was.
Mr. Owen? Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron, can you answer that?
I can answer that. When these lots are created and new homes are developed on there, based on the lot size, there's going to be a tree planting requirement, and that's arranged between, I think, 2 and 6 trees, depending on the lot size for these new lots here.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I just was looking for a number, but that's okay. I guess I can multiply.
Well, yeah. Okay. Any others? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry, we have the applicant has an opportunity for.
Oh, I'm sorry to rebut. I apologize. Yeah. So it isn't over.
No.
Sloan?
Don't worry, I don't feel slighted. And in fact, based on the responses you received from Tony and from Aaron, I don't have a whole lot to rebut at this point in time. I do want to turn it over to Tegan for just a minute, because I know she wanted to touch on a little bit more. There seems to be a substantial concern about emergency access, and we had talked about that earlier today. So I'm going to give Tegan about a minute or so, and then I'm just going to do a quick closing statement and turn it over to you guys, if that's okay.
That'd be great. If you have any idea what the number of trees you're going to plant are, I think that would be.
I don't have anything specific at this time, but obviously we're going to adhere to whatever the requirements are, definitely.
Okay. Even feel free to exceed them. Tegan, you're up.
Understood.
Okay.
Hello again. So one of the questions that we've seen come up a couple times now is related to emergency vehicle access. And so a point that I thought would be helpful and perhaps reassuring for folks is that I actually think that we're going to be improving emergency vehicle access into this area with the build out of this development. And the reason is that right now there were concerns about if you're in one of the existing neighborhoods and you want to be able to get over to Commercial Street, the primary ability to do that would be to go down Robbins Lane. But when this development builds out, there's going to be the connection to Misty Morning Avenue, which means that you can now access Commercial Street by going on Wiltsey or by going on Madras Street. So in the event that there was some sort of congestion or issue on Robbins Lane, there's now 2 other opportunities for, in the event of an emergency, for people to be able to access Commercial Street as well, which I think provides some great redundancies to the transportation network.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else?
All right, thank you.
Oh, Mark, you go ahead and close. I'm sorry.
I think I can do this in 3 minutes. Thank you, Mayor Bennett and members of City Council. Just in closing, I want to appreciate, and it's very clear based on what Aaron and Tony's responses, We've had a really good working relationship as we put this together, and we really appreciate staff in regards to that. They provided, and we support, again, the approval and the conditions, including especially the traffic mitigation issues of the Planning Commission. This was administrative decision, my apologies, and encourage the City Council to support the recommendation of staff to affirm this decision regarding the development. We look forward to adding another facet to the high demand of housing in Salem, the South Salem area, and really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, nothing further. I'm going to close this hearing. Councilor Leung, do you have a motion?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that the City Council reverse the Planning Administrator's decision approving the phase subdivision tentative plan, urban growth area preliminary declaration, and Class 2 adjustment case number SUB-UGA-ADJ22-01.
Okay. Okay, not hearing a second. Councilor Hoy, do you have a motion? Anybody got a motion out there?
I have a motion, Mr. Mayor. I move the City Council affirm the Planning Administrator's decision approving phase subdivision tentative plan, urban growth area preliminary declaration, and Class 2 adjustment case number SUB-UGA-ADJ22-01.
Okay, I'll second that. All right.
I have some comments, I guess.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I understand the concerns of the neighborhood. When you live in an area for a long period of time and you get accustomed to what it's like to live there, and then a development goes in nearby and it changes things. And I know that can be disruptive and unsettling, but that's the world we live in when we live inside the urban growth boundary. This, as I read it and hear all the testimony, I think that this meets all of the requirements. We absolutely need more housing in this city. We desperately need it. And I think this development meets all the criteria to be approved. I don't see a basis on which to deny it.
Okay. Councilor Leung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have any of you actually driven through the area, like over the past few days at all? You could just shake your head no or yes if you did or not.
Or you can ask a rhetorical question and then proceed.
Okay. Well, I did. I drove around there yesterday. I went up to Robbins Lane, actually parked on the side of the road. So I actually was, not supposed to park there, but I did leave my lights on, pull away to the farthest corner as I could, just to get a good look of that space. I also continued on to Genesis and took a look at, not Genesis, but where I guess that area would be. And I also went off to Misty Morning and took a peek at where the sign for the public hearing notification was listed. I took some pictures, mostly for my own benefit, to look at that general area to see what that impact would look like. And it's very frustrating. At the same time, I recognize we do need housing. We desperately need housing. But at the same time, are we taking consideration the impact that's going to be having within these neighborhoods? Specifically, not only the traffic impact, but also the dangers that's associated with it.
Okay. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we look at these developments, we've got to look at the criteria that could be applied to the developments. And the staff has done their work in this. And there have been developments in the past at various spots of the city that I have ended up voting against because I can see some criteria, sometimes around trees, sometimes around other issues, that would allow me to say, because of these certain elements of the plan, there is something legally to hang my hat on. And I don't see that that's the case here. And then again, as a lawyer, I'm looking at the process of this whole thing here. If you look, it's clear in the whole planning process for a long time, this has been an area that has been planned for homes. There are 3 streets that are already stubbed into the area.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't just, they were left there. They weren't closed off or cul-de-saced out. They were stubbed in to get to ready to go into this area, because that's how the whole planning process took place years ago. And I think we, in this case, we need to honor that process because it was planned and it meets the criteria.
Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, I'll probably support this motion. And this, I may not be able to ask this question because we've closed the public hearing, but I think we end up creating an island of unincorporated land. I'm just curious if that's true and what happens as a result of that. Like I think there's a private property on that is adjacent to phases 1 and 2 that creates an island of unincorporated land. Is that possible? And can staff speak to that, or is it outside of the purview of this?
It's really, we really kind of passed the question. Okay. Aaron, are we planning on annexing that island of unincorporated land, or what's going on?
This is the island here that Councillor Phillips is talking about, of unincorporated area. This becomes an enclave, and the city can force the annexation of the property.
Yeah. There will be more housing. If our policy of we desperately need housing in this community of all types continues, hopefully it will. The council won't change against the idea of housing our residents, but I assume that will come in as housing as well. It's kind of where I think Councillor Hoy summed it up really well, personally. Okay, nobody's got any further discussion. If the recorder, please call a vote.
Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Phillips.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Nay.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Councillor Nordijk.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Okay, we'll move on to 22-162, public hearing. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
The Salem City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing an appeal filed by the applicant following the hearings officer's denial of a conditional use permit, Class 3 site plan review, Class 2 adjustment, Class 2 driveway approach permit, and Class 1 design review, case number CU SPR ADJ DAP DR 21-05 for property located at the 4900 block of State Street. The applicable criteria are SRC 240.005D for the conditional use, SRC 220.005F3 for the Class 3 site plan review, SRC 250.005D2 for the Class 2 adjustment, SRC 804.025D for the Class 2 driveway approach permit, and SRC 225.005E1 for the Class 1 design review. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages circuit court. The hearing will be conducted with staff presentation first, followed by testimony from the following. The applicant is limited to 10 minutes. Neighborhood associations are limited to 5 minutes. Other interested parties are limited to 3 minutes, and the applicant has a rebuttal time. It's limited to 5 minutes and limited to matters that were introduced during the public hearing. Again, if when it's your turn to speak, would you please state your name and address or ward number for the record? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bennett and members of council. My name is Aaron Panko with the Community Development Department, here to present the council review of an appeal filed by the applicant following the denial of a conditional use permit, Class 3 site plan review, Class 2 adjustment, Class 2 driveway approach permit, and Class 1 design review for development of a 291 unit multifamily residential apartment complex located at the 4900 block of State Street. This time, I'd like to enter into the record the staff report, including all attachments and all public testimony received to date. This is a vicinity map of the property. The portion of property to be developed is approximately 10.7 acres in size, and it's located at the southeast corner of the property here at the intersection of State Street and Cordon Road. State Street is designated as a major arterial in the Salem Transportation System Plan. Cordon Road is designated as a Parkway Street. Greencrest Street Northeast is a future collector street that goes through the property and runs along the western boundary of the subject property. And the urban growth boundary it runs along Cordon Road along the eastern boundary of the subject property. This is a zoning map of the property. The property was rezoned to commercial retail, with surrounding properties rezoned to a combination of residential designations in 2010 as part of a voter-approved annexation. The proposed development of a 291-unit multifamily residential use occurs on the CR, the retail commercial zone portion of the property identified in red. Directly to the north of the proposed development is the location of a future city park. Property that is not shaded on the map, located south of State Street, is outside city limits and is primarily developed with single-family dwellings. To the west is property that's zoned RM2, it's multifamily residential. It's part of the East Park Estates Plan Unit development. And the RM2 portion here includes a previously approved 36-unit apartment complex that directly abuts and shares access with this apartment complex. And then as you go further to the west, there's also property located outside city limits. It's occupied by the Pin Oak Mobile Home Park. And this is an aerial photo of the property. It's a vacant property, again, at the intersection here of State Street and Cordon Road. And then to the north of this is that area for the future city park. And this is an aerial photo that's shown at a greater extent. It shows some of the construction activities that are occurring with the East Park Plan Unit development. And this here shows the plans for the Plan Unit development. What was approved already is 659 single-family units, and then a 36-unit multifamily residential complex. For a total of 695 units. The future city park is also shown on the plan, and then the commercial area in question down here at the lower right-hand side. And this is a site plan for the complex. The complex takes access from Greencrest Street here. The applicant has shown future development that occurs between Greencrest and the apartment complex, including a convenience store, drive-through use, and gasoline service station. You can also see a few of the units that have already been approved as part of the Plan Unit development that abut the property here. But these are the apartments in question. And this is a photo taken along Cordon Road, and it's looking south towards the property, towards State Street. And this is a photo taken from State Street, looking north towards the property, and then Cordon Road would be in the background there. The property was subject to a voter-approved annexation with a concurrent zone change, resulting in the CR retail commercial zoning designation for this portion of property. The property was approved with a commercial zoning designation in part to serve the existing surrounding residential area and the new residential developments occurring at the East Park Plan Unit development. A conceptual plan was provided at the time of annexation showing that no residential units would be developed in the CR zone portion of the property. And a shadow plan, also seen here, further illustrates that the commercially zoned property would not, or would be used for a variety of commercial uses and not multifamily residential. Multifamily residential uses require a conditional use permit in the CR retail commercial zone. And the conditional use permit criteria in part require that any reasonably likely adverse impacts of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized and that the proposed use will be reasonably compatible with the surrounding area. The nearest commercially zoned properties are located roughly 1 mile to the west, located on Lancaster Drive. Approximately 19 acres of commercially zoned land was reserved on this property to address the deficit of commercial services in the surrounding area. However, of the 19 acres, approximately 6.25 acres will be dedicated as a future city park, and this proposed multifamily use would occupy approximately 10.7 acres, leaving only about 7% of the land that was originally envisioned for commercial development available for actual commercial use. The hearings officer found that the proposal was not in substantial conformance with the conceptual plan and that approving the multifamily use would result in a reduction of available land for commercial uses and that there were no conditions that could be placed on this development to mitigate this negative impact. The hearings officer also noted concerns regarding compatibility of plans for the future gasoline service station, the convenience store and drive-through use, that will directly abut the proposed multifamily use with minimal screening. The hearings officer found that the proposal does not protect the residential areas from these intensive commercial uses and is therefore not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, general development goals and policies regarding screening, outdoor storage, and lighting. The hearings officer generally found the applications for Class 3 site plan review, Class 2 adjustment, Class 2 driveway approach permit, and Class 1 design review to be in conformance with applicable criteria and development standards of the Salem Revised Code as proposed and with the inclusion of conditions. However, because the hearings officer denied the conditional use permit that's needed to allow the proposed multifamily residential use for the subject property, those other applications that were collectively submitted were also denied. And the applicant has noted that this application is for needed housing and that provisions of ORS Chapter 197 require the city apply only clear and objective standards to the review of the application. The applicant has requested Class 2 adjustments in a few areas where the proposal does not comply with clear and objective multifamily design review standards, including an increase in the setback allowance for buildings along State Street and Cordon Road, and a request to eliminate the direct pedestrian access for ground floor units abutting State Street and Cordon Road. Testimony was provided from the East Lancaster Neighborhood Association on February 9th, 2022. And also earlier this morning, we received some additional testimony from Elna, indicating that the board had voted unanimously to oppose the proposed development. And the reasons for that that were cited were compatibility of the proposed multifamily use in the gasoline service station and concerns regarding shared access between those two uses. And staff is recommending that the City Council affirm the decision of the hearings officer and deny the consolidated applications. Thank you.
Mayor Bennett, you're still muted if you're talking.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Carl Ivanov representing the applicant, as well as Ed Trumke, and you two have 10 minutes. So whoever's Mr. Ivanov, Mr. Trumke. There we go.
All right.
Hi.
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I am reading the testimony of Carl Ivanoff, 27375 Southwest Parkway Ave, Wilsonville, Oregon, 97070, on behalf of East Park LLC, the developer of both the 645 single-family lots, as well as the 291 apartments that we are talking about tonight. I will begin with a few PowerPoint slides to show the overall project and how these apartments blend in and are consistent with the master plan. A large project like East Park requires major infrastructure. The first slide shows a fitting for the new 24-inch water main, which we installed at night to avoid traffic disruption. The water main runs from Gaffin up to Auburn Street, which is about 1 mile, and is the backbone of the water supply for the entire area. It serves existing houses, East Park, and future development yet to come. The next slide is a photo that shows the new sanitary sewer pump station on Auburn. Like the water main, it serves a much larger area than this project and will replace the existing pump station on State Street in Cougar. There are numerous underground pipes, and we carefully routed them around the mature trees that you see in the foreground. The next slide shows the first houses being built in phase 1 in the northwest corner of the site. The next slide are the same houses in the back of this photo viewed from the southeast, showing the new streets in phase 1 where the next houses are going in the summer. The next slide is a photo taken from above the corner of State and Cordon, with the apartment site in the foreground and the park site north of the apartments. The next slide shows what the apartments will look like. Here's an image of our North Place project, which has 324 apartments over on Kale Street. These apartments will be complete and leased by next month. The next slide, the East Park floor plans are the same, and the community will look very similar to North Place. Lastly, it's a phasing map showing the park and the other green spaces among the residential areas. This shows how the apartments fit into the larger product. The city wants the site to be commercial, and originally I did too. I build neighborhood commercial projects. I'm just completing a large site on Main Street in Malala that has a grocery store, multiple restaurants, a bank, a gas station, a convenience store, a Dollar Tree, and a Goodwill. Commercial property is inherently more valuable than multifamily, so I have every incentive to build a grocery-anchored retail at East Park too. However, this site was commercially marketed for 2 years, and I only got one interested tenant for a convenience store with 4 gas pumps. Other than our one tenant, nobody else was interested. I am familiar with the lack of desire for commercial space in this area. Over 10 years ago, I built a site with over 14,000 square feet of retail on Portland Road and I-5. And in 10 years, there is still vacancy. Retail space is not in demand at all. Please understand the choice here is not between residential and commercial use. The choice is between residential and vacant land with no use. Nobody is going to build larger scale commercial in this location. I cannot change that. This site used to be the old mushroom plant. It sat vacant for decades until we started developing housing. Until the UGB is expanded and there is more housing to the east, there is just not enough to demand to support any commercial at this site. And there are no current plans to move the UGB that I am aware of. When I first included these apartments in the project, nobody on the staff or planning commission had any concerns. It was only 2 years later when I went in for design review that someone decided this site needs to be built out as commercial and denied us the legal right to build housing. My lawyer, Ed Tromke, tells me that this is needed housing under Oregon state law, so I have every legal right to build the apartments. All of the objective standards like height, parking, and density are met with this design. When the denial was issued, I was very surprised and disappointed. We have spent an immense amount of time and money to fully comply with Oregon and the city of Salem's laws and codes. When the hearings officer improperly denied this application, the impact of the denial was quick and expensive. All of the subcontractors that I had under contract dropped the project and moved to other sites. Getting back on their schedules will require new contracts with increased pricing. Being forced to fight to build what the law allows forced me to hire Jordan Ramus to protect my rights. Quality is not cheap. My lender demands that these costs get passed through to the tenants. Although if we have to go to LUBA, then the city will get the privilege of paying for Jordan Ramos, and I would appreciate that. Either way, these apartments will not be stopped because staff wants commercial. The law allows this housing without the need to prove that it is reasonable or compatible or livable or reasonably compatible with the planning department's idea of livability. These are the same buildings that were permitted and built at North Place. They meet the objective code requirements. All I am asking for is to build more housing. There are hundreds of families waiting for a home. So please, approve this appeal tonight and let me make it happen for them. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Help me out just for a second. Why, you've talked a lot about wanting to build housing, want to build housing. Why didn't you come in for a rezone on that for housing and see if that was maybe the better approach, that you couldn't find commercial development? I'm just not sure I understand the dynamics here.
This is Ed Tromke responding. I'm the attorney, if I may, Mr. Mayor. It's not necessary. Under the statutes that the legislature has adopted to preempt city ordinances, and trust me, I represent cities too. It's not always fun to be a city, having the legislature tell you what to do. Basically, the statute 197.307 applies to all housing. It says that only clear and objective standards can apply, and it declared that this was necessary because Oregon is so short of its in satisfying the need for its residents to have places to live. So it's really not necessary, and it would be an additional cost and expense to do a zoning and comp plan amendment in order to achieve what you've suggested. Not to say it can't be done, but it really isn't necessary.
I really got to be honest with you. I'm genuinely confused as to why this isn't after your discussion. We're not talking about housing a lot. You're talking about housing a lot, but the problem seems to revolve around a gas station and convenience store and the access to that. And maybe I'm just misunderstanding this. And I was hoping maybe you as the applicant could explain it.
Well, if you look at the staff report for this evening's meeting, it even states that this application, as it sits, complies with the screening and the setback for the gas station, but the staff wants more. They want more to make it more compatible, more to fit in better. That's not a clear and objective standard. The clear and objective standard is the setback and the screening, which your own staff report says it's in compliance with. So,
okay. Councilor Hoy, can you ask it right? I'm not sure I'm asking my question right. I'm not sure I understand.
I'm not sure I can either, but I guess just to go back to the presentation from the applicants, you're comparing these apartments to the ones up on Kale. I'm familiar with the apartments up on Kale. I think you're right. The buildings are very similar. I have never seen a gas station in the backyard of those apartment buildings. Have I missed that?
Future phases.
Future phases.
You will, if you're a patient man.
Okay.
The commercial does take more time. There's not the market acceptance for it that there is for housing. So developers proceed in due course.
But you're into this for 2 years, if I understand it. It's just now coming on. If I understood it, have you been like marketing it for 2 years and you have not found interest?
It's been over 2 years.
How long you been marketing that land up on Kale Road for commercial?
Pardon?
How long have you been marketing the land on Kale Road for commercial? You're saying be patient, you're bringing a gas station. I'm not sure you're throwing
4 years ago?
some sliders on me. I'm not tracking this, I'm afraid. It may be me, I'm just tired.
It's a good project. Yeah, the answer to your question, unfortunately, is protected by an NDA. But let's say that we are under contract for the property that will be commercial, which is why the city has yet to see the annexation or the zoning that would satisfy your question.
Okay.
It'll be the phase 2 of
I'm just going to check. Does anyone else have a question or anything to go with the? Yeah, Councilor Stapleton.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to try. I think we're all kind of struggling to come up with our questions here. I guess I am feeling a little confused at actually the tone at which this whole conversation is really taking place. It's hard for me to see y'all because you're so far back on the screen, but I'm just trying to figure out, I'm somebody who really likes to connect with people and communicate well. And I feel like this kind of has taken quite the turn right off the bat, and I'm trying to understand that. So this is the first time that we've met each other, and we're coming together to try and solve a problem. And I feel that this is really quite combative. I kind of was a little taken aback during our conversation. I felt, maybe y'all were maybe even threatening was kind of the tone of voice that I heard from you. So I guess I'm reaching out because I wanted to communicate with you how I am receiving your testimony and the way that you're presenting your information. I really am trying to come to the table and understand the struggles that you're facing right now and trying to understand the struggles that the neighborhood is facing and the city staff. And so I really would like to, I maybe don't have a question right now, but I wanted to communicate with you how I am receiving your testimony right now. So I guess that's enough said from me right now.
Sure. This is Ed Tromke again. I am an attorney, and I'll serve as city attorneys in a couple of cities, but we're not threatening. And so please don't take it that way. What we are telling you, though, is that the law has changed. Most cities haven't changed their codes to comply with what the state's requiring. And the state is saying, build housing. It's needed. We're so far behind in satisfying the need to build our communities that basically the state is overriding everything that is the touchy-feely part of development, the compatibility, to make it pretty. Mr. Ivanoff, sitting here next to me, is building basically the same buildings as in the North Place development. They are as pretty as you can make apartments in a higher density development. They are well built. Everything about them has been approved in the past. The only piece of this that, well, there are two pieces to it. One is the screening, which, hedges and screens grow. They won't start off being as beautiful as they will end up being in a few years. Just remember that. But the other piece of it is your staff has simply said no. They just refuse to accept the fact that the law's changed. And that's costing Mr. Ivanoff and his company a great deal of money because needed housing has to be built. Needed housing includes, housing that's within, that is subject to a conditional use permit in a mixed use commercial zone. The statute even says that. And on top of that, there's another statute that says that only clear and objective standards can apply to any housing. It says it applies to all housing. So if you detect a tone in the communications, it's frustration. It's the city staff isn't listening, isn't learning from, you had a state representative present earlier. Listen to what those folks have to say, because in fact, that is what every city has to do. This is to go into HB 2001, 2003, which requires the duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in single family zones. That's another layer that the state has stepped in, and God bless them. God bless you for your job. You've got to deal with all of that, and it's not easy. But the frustration is that Mr. Ivanov has through his companies put in large water supplies, sewage pump stations, and on the expectation that he can use these apartments and recoup his costs. They are very expensive to put in. So please, we don't threaten. What I will say is an appeal will be filed. That's not a threat. We believe very firmly that the statutes say what we say they say, and we will proceed to get to the end result. We don't want to take the taxpayers' money to pay me and Mr. Schaefer over here, the planning staff, for this work. That's not what we want to do. We want to get housing built. We want to have places for people to live, just like most housing advocates do. Developers and housing advocates really are the same kinds of people.
Well, we appreciate your public spirit. Let Chris Hoy ask you a question. He's also a state representative. He may have some thoughts on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually was hoping to hear from Mr. Panko and or Mr. Kapani, because it's been suggested that maybe you haven't learned from this new state law. And I'm wondering if perhaps it's not that you haven't learned, but maybe you just disagree with the interpretation. So I'm hoping that you can explain to us what your interpretation is compared to the applicant's.
Yeah, we're gonna need some clarification from you all to kind of. I agree with the counselor as to what's the deal.
Are you available for this one?
Yes, I can speak a little bit to these notions. And so, there are several things that we do disagree with regarding the legal position. The first idea is this notion that state law is preempting city ordinance. That there isn't preemption language contained in the ordinance, and in fact, the ordinance allows for alternative aesthetic processes to be applied. The mayor asked about, well, gee, why isn't this a zone change? And that process was available to them. And they made the calculation that they would not have to go through the rigors of a zone change, and that they would be able to proffer this argument that conditional use process without any conditions, without any criteria, would afford them the best method of going forward. So state law provides that if there's an objective and clear standard available, that the city can provide an alternative aesthetic value. And so in this situation, there was something available to them. They could have asked for a zone change. They chose to choose this aesthetic process, and that's allowed to have these other variable criteria. The hearings officer's decision is also a legal opinion that disagrees with Mr. Tromke and the developers. And so there's a disagreement about this. And, Mr. Tromke and his folks want to trot out these other things that they've done. Those are largely irrelevant to the question at hand. And so there's a disagreement about how the law operates. They additionally fail to comply with a component of the city code, which is that the plan that they've put forward doesn't meet the conceptual plan. SRC 260.090 specifies that it has to be in compliance. And when this property was annexed, there was a conceptual plan put into place, and it was to be used as commercial property. And so their application fails on that basis. So there's a disagreement here about how the law is going to operate in this circumstance. And quite frankly, to apply the state law in the way that Mr. Trompe is suggesting means that the conditional use process is rendered meaningless. It doesn't give the city the opportunity to try to blend properties so that they work in harmony.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Kapani. I have to tell you, the applicants, I am an attorney. So I'm understanding this stuff. And I also, in my past, have been in a law firm that was city attorneys for various cities in those southern Willamette Valley. And I will tell you that I was always very happy when the city politicians followed the recommendations of the city attorney. The other thing I see is, and I've been a trial lawyer for 45 years, I mean, I heard what you folks were saying, and it sure sounded like a threat to me. And I think, Mr. Trompe, you've done a good job backing up on it by saying we're going to appeal, but that's not the language that I heard. What I heard is we're going to have to pay your attorney's fees. And that to me is inappropriate. And I already have my views, how I was going to vote on this before I heard the testimony, and it hasn't changed my view any. Thank you.
All right. What do we got? Okay, I'm going to call up a new witness then, I think, and we'll see how that goes. Suzanne Kaltwasser. You have 5 minutes, Suzanne.
Okay, just a second. I have to, I assume you can see and hear me.
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. So
identify yourself and we'll go ahead.
I'm Suzanne Kaltwasser, and I'm representing the East Lancaster Neighborhood Association.
Thank you.
I submitted some written testimony, I hope you've taken a look at it. Basically, we had a couple of concerns, one having to do with the State Street access, and the other one having to do with the Green Street access. And after listening to your conversations and questions and the testimony of the applicant, I wanted to add just a couple of other comments. First of all, I appreciate that you and the council are seeing through the confusing aspects of this land use case. And essentially, the neighborhood association agrees that this should have been a zone change. And we do also agree that we need housing, but we need housing that's done properly and compatible with the surrounding area. And if they had gone through a zone change, they would have had to answer those kinds of questions about. And you raised a really good point about the buffering. It's not about the landscaping. It's how do you make a safe transition between a gas station and an apartment complex that's going to house children. And if you look at the entrance that they have on Green Street, they are proposing that the entrance not be an actual street, but it be the driveway into a commercial area that people have to navigate by walking or by driving or by children on bicycles that's got all these conflicting modes of transportation and no clear delineation of where do I walk safely to get to my bus stop, or how do I just get into my apartment complex if I don't want to go to that commercial area. And so our issues are very basic to that. And the applicant hasn't addressed those issues. That's why we are opposed to the way they've set it up. I think that we could get there if they didn't insist on doing it their way, but would work more with the neighborhoods and more with the city on how do we delineate the difference between free access to your apartment complex with this commercial area. And we understand that, you know, commercial area in a small scale might work here, but I'm not uncomfortable with saying, let's develop the whole area and then put it back out for more commercial development. Why you have to have it done simultaneously doesn't make any sense to us, because once you build 600 houses and 300 apartments, you're going to have a different dynamic in that area that commercial operations might say, hey, we could probably put something here other than a gas station. So that's, to me, putting the cart before the horse. We think that there's a way to get this developed, but not with this application. So we strongly encourage you to deny. And if they want to waste their money and time and energy appealing, you know, that's their choice. But we would strongly recommend that they just go back to the drawing board, listen to some of the testimony, some of the concerns, see if they can't make some modifications that would make it acceptable. I don't know what that process is at this point because there's been a decision made or whatever, but somehow it seems to me that we should be able to get that area developed appropriately in a compatible and safe way that makes sense. So if you have any questions.
Any questions for Suzanne? Okay. Okay, that's everyone I believe I have signed up. Any further questions for staff? Anything? Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. Councilor Hoyt.
We need rebuttal first, I think, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, is it rebuttal? I'm sorry.
Start video. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead and.
We'd like to respond and do a short rebuttal. I think we have 5 minutes granted.
Yes, you do.
We try not to take it all.
Okay.
The city attorney said that the ordinance allows alternative processes to apply. And when there are alternative processes, that can be an exemption from the clear and objective standards on one or more of the alternate paths. But there must be one path that the applicant can choose that contains only clear and objective standards, one or the other. And that's 197.307 subsection 6. There has to be a clear and objective standards path. A zoning change, and especially one that incorporates a comp plan change, is by definition, they both are by definition not clear and objective. They are discretionary with the city council or the other legislative body that makes that decision. And so it can't be a clear and objective path. That means that leaves this one. This path has to be only clear and objective standards. And in terms of what Mr. Kapani said about eliminating all of the standards that would apply to a conditional use permit, that's not what we're stating happens. But the statute does circumscribe the criteria that can apply. Specifically, the applicable standards have to be clear and objective in every conditional use permit. That's going to take some drafting by city staff and council to make those kinds of standards clear and objective. But every city in the state is addressing that right now. It's not unique to the city of Salem. That still is a requirement. I don't want to be the bearer of all these bad news, of all this bad news to the city, but this is what the legislature has done to cities. It's not Mr. Ivanov's companies doing this. This is what the law provides.
And screening and all that, we know that. We changed that. We changed it. It's fine.
Oh, it does comply.
It does comply. It complies in with every one of the clear and objective standards. And the city should reverse the hearings officer's decision and approve this. It may not be what city council wants, but it's what the law requires. And so that's why it should be done.
Okay. Well, then with that, I think I'll close the hearing and now I'll call on Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move City Council affirm the hearing officer's decision denying conditional use permit Class 3 site plan review, Class 2 adjustment, Class 2 driveway approach permit, and Class 1 design review case number CUSPRADJDAPDR21-05.
Second.
Second by Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we have two different lawyers here giving us opposite opinions on what the law says. I'm inclined to go with what our attorney says, and they've given us legal advice in terms of what the law says and how this is applied, and I think that we ought to support that. I haven't heard convincing evidence that they're wrong. So I think that supporting the hearings officer decision is the right thing to do here. And forget all that for just a moment. I don't like the idea of this gas station being in the backyard of this apartment building without some sort of appropriate buffer. Yeah. I don't think it's appropriate. So that's all I have.
Good. Thank you, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I think there was one other thing. I mean, I'm going to support the motion, of course. You could tell that from my earlier comments, but I think there was one other thing that was mentioned too. The comments seemed to be directed at the city staff did this and the city staff did that. Well, it was the hearings officer who is, I don't know who the hearings officer was. Maybe it was the city staff, but normally hearings officers go out someplace. So for what Councilor Hoy said and the other reasons I expressed earlier, I'm going to vote for his motion.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, if the recorder please call a roll.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Leung.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordijk.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll move on then to information reports. We'll begin with the Economic Development Quarterly Report. Did everybody have a chance to read that in detail? Have any questions? Need more information? Ms. Rutherford, is there something you want to present, or are we're all okay? We'll move on.
I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay, excellent. We'll move on then to whatever the next one is. Just a sec here. Six B, I'm sorry. God, I had a hard time seeing that one. How is this gonna be done? I know Councilor Hoy said he had a motion. He would like two motions to make on this. How do you wanna proceed here? Kristen, you were gonna do the presentation. Who's gonna do the information report?
I have John Pascal, our airport manager, is here this evening. And he could speak to the contents of the report, answer any questions for you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Pascal, the airport manager. Wasn't intending to do a presentation this evening.
Okay.
We're intending to bring both of these items in a future action item to council. The purpose of tonight's report was just to give the council a broad overview of where we are in the commercial air service development readiness and implementation efforts, and what items would be coming before council for approval in future meetings.
Why don't you tell us quite simply, where are we on this? What's the situation?
As the staff report indicates, back in early March, we received one letter of intent from a regional air carrier.
Okay.
We've been in conversations, and I say we, it's the Community Air Service Development Committee. We've been in conversations with other air carriers that have expressed a future interest in serving the Salem community. So with that first letter of intent, that triggers federal requests for security screening, baggage screening, all of the commercial air service implementation efforts, and all of the infrastructure and equipment that's needed to accommodate commercial air service. So it's a long way of saying we're at the very beginning of that process.
Sure.
Data collecting, we're getting information from the federal government, we're understanding what our terminal modification needs might be. All of those sorts of efforts are you know, we're about a month into that already, into what's liable to be a several month process. There are a couple of items that I understand there's an interest in having approved sooner than later, but they weren't brought to the council as action items. So I don't know the process for them from an information report.
Right. Well, the councilor will make a motion on I think both of those issues, if I understood what he's saying. The question I've got, I guess, is after looking at your report and thinking about what's kind of going on here, are we committing ourselves beyond taking money from the state of Oregon that will be the easiest money we'll ever get from the state of Oregon for our airport, and saying that we, as a kind of prospective statement, ultimately, that we are willing to waive landing fees as we look at commercial air services? I mean, are we any, what does that do to our relationship with TSA, or with, my understanding, it improves our relationship with potential air carriers. Does it improve our relationship with harm our relationship with TSA? Does it change TSA's ultimate requirements on us for both capital and personnel improvements? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Do they change anything in the game?
I do understand your question. I guess I would say that neither of these two items have any impact on our relationship or efforts with TSA or FAA. These are kind of internal moves that we can make. We're not committing ourselves to any future decisions as it goes to budgeting or staffing or any other future expenses for terminal modifications. We haven't gotten to those points yet. If I break the two up, the fee, what's being referred to as fee waivers is typically referred to as an air carrier incentive package. And when airports go out and recruit air service themselves, they typically have this incentive package already in place. Because the city wasn't actively recruiting the airlines, we haven't done this in advance. So we're really doing it in arrears. So that's just a fee waiver. It provides the airlines a no-cost operating environment for the first 2 years to help them kind of stand up on their feet. The money from the state, and if Representative Moore Green was still on the phone, I don't know if she is or not, I would like to thank her for that gift. It is the easiest money of my 25 years of managing airports that I've ever received, without a heaping helping of paperwork and strings attached and so on. But that effort is really just to help support us in terms of some of the infrastructure and equipment requirements that we're going to need to make to be able to in-plane and deplane passengers and to have baggage tugs and all that equipment that we don't currently have. So those are things that that don't make any difference to what the TSA requirements are going to be, or the federalization of the airport, or any of those future action items.
Or the ultimate decision that we're going to proceed with commercial carriers. I mean, that we're really in a new enough stage that what we're doing is joining with others in feeling temperature out there. Is that they're taking the temperature out there among these airlines? Is that? I just want to know that we're not committing millions of dollars of city money to a project at this point. We may.
So, Mayor, if I could jump in here, I would say that we are at the first stage of this, but we have a long ways to go before there's a marriage. Okay. So this is the beginning of a courtship right now, and that we will be coming back to council before any big decisions are made.
Okay. Okay. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Pascal and Interim City Manager Rutherford, for your explanations, because what I heard you say to the mayor's question is this is not any commitment other than to continue to explore. Is that correct? Yes?
Yeah, I was looking to see if John was answering. Yes, that is correct.
Then you can say it together.
Yeah, all together now. The other thing is, as the council members who have been here for a while have would recall, I've had some doubts about the airport from the get-go, and I've always said, okay, if we want to continue moving forward without committing ourselves or without expending city funds, I'm willing to look into that. And I will also say that, you know, part of my concern was climate action and greenhouse gas emissions from the airplane, and the airplanes, and the question was what emits more greenhouse gas, cars, 100 cars driving to Portland or a plane flying to Portland. And I had a meeting with Angie Oniwuchi of Travel Salem and the consultant from, I forget his name, but from up in West Lynn or someplace, who is working on that. And they were pretty excited about talking about the types of airplanes they're going to have there that would actually emit less greenhouse gases than a Toyota Corolla or something like that. I may have the, you know, maybe it was Camry, who knows, but it was some small car. Yeah. Then they also talked about electronic planes, just like electronic cars. And Mr. Pascal and I have had a couple conversations about that in the past, where he told me that, I think I'm right on this, John, that you already have 2 or 3 plugins, not for EVs, but for EPs, I would say, electronic planes. Is that correct?
We will at some point. They haven't been installed yet. Right.
That's where we're moving. So I was at least wanted to hear some more about this, because maybe, in fact, if my my major concern is the climate crisis and the emission of greenhouse gases, maybe the way the airport is going in terms of smaller flights and potentially electronic planes, we may not have those concerns, and it may, in fact, emit less greenhouse gases than cars driving to Portland. I just don't know, and so I'm happy to continue this. And then one final thing, John, and I commend you for this, because you've told it to us straight. I'm looking at the last sentence on page 4, and I'll just read it. The City of Salem Airport and Fire Department, as well as the FAA and TSA, could invest significant resources to accommodate commercial air service, only to find that the service does not arrive as originally intended or does not sustain itself for the long term. So I'm very glad.
Been there.
Pardon me?
Been there.
Yeah, we have. And that was the questions I asked before. You know, it's failed, set aside the climate action and greenhouse gas stuff. Commercial airlines have tried to come in here and they've failed. And so I applaud you, Mr. Pascal, for recognizing that we may have the best intentions, and we may do all these things, and it's not going to work out, just like the other people have done in the past. So I'm willing to move forward a little bit, especially because of the greenhouse gas potential situation that I'd love to hear more about.
Good. Okay, I'm going to have Councilor Hoy go now.
Well, now that you've already discussed my motion that I haven't even made
It's your turn to make them. Let's no more hiding the ball, man. Let's go.
I move City Council accept the $540,388 from the state of Oregon for the purchase of ground handling equipment.
Second.
Second by Stapleton.
Thank you. And has been stated previously in anticipation of my motion, apparently, this doesn't commit us to anything. This really is showing a good faith effort. So airlines know that we're at the table. The city is a full partner in this conversation, but it does not obligate us to do anything. We can, it doesn't commit any future funds or anything like that. This is accepting the funds from the state for the ground handling equipment. I am going to make another motion, which also will not obligate us, but will be a little bit different than this one after this one is voted on.
Well, I really want to thank you for making the motion. I think it's time to kind of fish or cut bait with the airport, or the folks who've been out trying to find air service. They believe they have found it. I think their feeling, and my impression is their feeling is that if the city doesn't show interest, it will scare off any potential interest. And I think it's important that we move forward, but that we cannot, I think understanding how complex this is going to be is something we will all pick up over the next many, many months, finding out just how complicated setting up this kind of thing is for everybody involved. And I think that'll be the real test, and the seriousness of those coming is gonna be real interesting to test. What I want to really think is important here is to really thank Raquel Moore Green and the legislature for putting this package together for us, to give us an opportunity to keep moving forward on this issue. I think that was just the kind of relationship you want with your state government. They've been working with us obviously on a whole batch of other things we all know about. This one, I think, is somewhat unique, and I think it's something we can be real pleased with as we move forward. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, why don't we call the roll on this one then?
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Phillips.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councillor Hoy.
Aye.
Councillor Nordijk.
Aye.
Councillor Barney.
Aye.
Councillor Stapleton.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the City Council approve a 100% waiver of all terminal rent, landing fees, and apron parking fees for the first 2 years of operation at the airport.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, second by Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you. This is along the same lines as the other one. It's kind of a standard practice in the industry that there is a fee waiver for the first 2 years to make these things work. I think that ultimately we will actually benefit if this all happens and if it all goes through. Financially, we will come out better for it for this fee waiver. So I don't think it'll be a loss for the city at all in the long run. So I think it's, again, just showing a good faith effort that the city is serious about this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I second that. I don't think there's enough money involved in this fee waivers to be the real deal killer, if there is one ever. But I think it's just really important. We have heard for years the feeling of constituents for having air service here. And I think that to be really true to that, you have to continue to pursue it until you can. And I think we're really just so close to the beginning, it's very hard to see where this goes. And I know the folks working on it are just working night and day to make this happen. So I think helping is really important to keep the ball rolling on this thing. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, if the recorder call a roll.
Councillor Phillips.
Aye.
Councillor Leung.
Aye.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy,
Aye.
Counselor Nordike,
Aye.
Counselor Varney,
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton,
Aye.
Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Motion passes. And finally, purchases. Anyone have any questions on purchases? Okay. Hey, let's have our first readings.
Ordinance Bill number 622, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 4090 Milton Street Northeast, annexed to the city of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1 and East Salem Sewer and Drainage District.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to advance ordinance bill number 6-22.
Second.
Second by Hoy. Any discussion? Okay, if the recorder would please call the roll.
Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll go to the next first reading.
Ordinance Bill number 722, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 4929 Auburn Road Northeast, annexed to the city of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1.
Okay, Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move City Council advance ordinance bill number 7-22, approving annexation, applying city zoning, and approving withdrawal from Marion County Fire District Number 1 for a 0.31 acre territory located at 4929 Auburn Road Northeast to second reading for enactment.
Second.
Second by Stapleton. Any discussion? If the recorder then would please call the roll.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. And let's do our second readings.
Right. Ordinance Bill number 422, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 2490 Michigan Lane Northwest, annexed to the city of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Spring Valley Rural Fire Protection District. Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes, or the bill passes. And then our final second reading.
Ordinance Bill number 522, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 4255 Cordon Road Northeast, annexed to the city of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Marion County Fire District Number 1. Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Leung.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay. That also passes into law or whatever. Okay. Anything for the good of the order?
We do have one more person signed up for comment, Mr.
Oh, do we? I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Who is it?
Steve Anderson.
Oh. Steve?
Yeah, I'm here, Mayor, with a very positive comment for the end of the meeting. I wanted to say a large thank you to Eunice Kim and her staff for her work on our Salem. I had the privilege of representing the Neighborhood Association and Edgewater Partners to work closely with her in terms of seeing that
We had good outreach. It went very smoothly. She was at the market, a lot of places. And by the way, we're starting the market again on May 5th, so please come. But just a couple things, because we've heard West Salem doesn't want more housing, and there seems to be some, murmurings going out there. And I just wanted to kind of share what we learned as we work with Eunice. Most people that express that are a little dissatisfied with the lack of infrastructure, but overall, Eunice said as we started this, we had 272 acres of multifamily. As of the map that is going to come to you shortly with the proposed changes, we're going to see 363 acres of multifamily in West Salem. That's a 33.5% increase. We also work closely in the Edgewater Historical District to get that old cannery area rezoned M3, which is a high density, creates jobs and makes that happen in that neighborhood. So we've been very pleased with that addition. We've been able to work out on Marine Drive to get multifamily in that area. And so just overall, it's been a positive experience as a neighborhood, and as the Edgewater partners, we've worked closely with Eunice, up with some major changes. In fact, if you look at the housing needs analysis, we're at 44% of the 207 acre deficit determined in that analysis. So just want to let you know as you get to our Salem that the community has been very supportive of Eunice, and we've been working hard to do our part to get multifamily in the neighborhood. So have a good evening and rest well.
Thank you very much. Anything for the good of the order other than Mr. Anderson? Okay, we are adjourned.
For more videos and for more information, go to capitalcommunitymedia.org and follow us on social media.